I just turned it on. I'll move it closer. Is that better, Kim? Is this better?
Not being picked up by closed captions either.
Can you hear me now? It is on.
No, and the captions aren't picking up.
Can you hear me now? I'm sitting this close to it, though. Is that weird? All right, great.
Are the closed captions on? Sorry, I just want to make sure for people at home.
That makes sense. So welcome, everyone. While we're just having one quick pause while we work on our closed captions getting back on for viewers at home. Okay. Yes, I see them now. So we have our closed captions. So that's good news for our viewers at home. And this is a perfect time for us to, I read this first, Ms. Dixon? Okay. So we are having this meeting as a hybrid meeting. As you can see, we have hybrid remote access for folks at home or joining from wherever they would like. And we do have members of the public and city councilors here in person with us. So to begin, I'm going to begin with the script for hybrid city council meetings. So as a preliminary matter, this is Julie Flowers, president of the Beverly City Council. I do notice that Ms. Kent used to remind President Guanci to smile, and I don't have that reminder, but I will smile. Before beginning the meeting, I am confirming that all members of the public on Google Meet can hear me. Right now we have just Mr. Dole on Google Meet.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Dole. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location listed on this notice, so Beverly Middle School Library, and it is possible that all or any members of the public body may attend remotely with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may also be accessed remotely via Google Meet at the link meet.google.com/MCNFNHJ-JOI. When meeting by law or allowed by the chairpersons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in this meeting, public may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted above. Additionally, this meeting is being broadcast live in real time on BevCam on channel 99 or watching BevCam's YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/BevCamTV, and clicking into the BevCam government channel. Meeting ground rules for public hearings, as we have public hearings now and at 7 in our 7 p.m. meeting. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite the council to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please remember, those who are joining us on our remote option, to mute the phone or computer when you are not speaking. You may mute or unmute yourself or be muted by the meeting host by clicking the microphone mute unmute icon, pressing the mute button on your telephone, or pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. For anyone joining us remotely for a public hearing, we are asking that you reserve the chat function for technical difficulties or for those who would like to be recognized to speak in the public hearing. And at that time, we'll ask that you just type your name and address for the record into the chat function, and that's how we'll go through that list. Please remember not to add other public comment to the chat. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please state your name and address before speaking. After members have spoken, I will also ask that members of the public in person who wish to speak can sign up on the paper that is here with us on the podium and identify their names and addresses only. And once we have the list of public commenters, we'll call on each person and give 3 minutes for any comments. So one other reminder before we officially call the meeting to order and call the roll. For counselors especially, one thing that is different from in chambers is that the microphones are off until they are on. So when you are ready to speak, there's a small button on your microphone. press push where it says push, and the light on your microphone will turn green. That's when you're mic'd. You can turn it off when you're done speaking, and the same will be happening for members of the public. When you come up, you can press push when you're ready to speak. The microphone will turn green, and then you're ready to speak. These microphones are primarily for BevCam, so I also would remind all of us to speak loudly so that members of the public who are in person with us can also hear us well. So with that, we'll call to order this special meeting of the Beverly City Council, Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Ms. Dixon, will you please call the roll?
Bowen?
Here.
Crowley? Here. Feldman? Here. Hausman? Here. Rand?
Here.
Rotundo? Here. St. Hilaire? Here. Sweeney and Flowers?
Here. Thank you very much. Councillor Crowley, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Crowley. Thank you, everyone. So the purpose of this meeting at 6 o'clock is specifically for the purposes of having a public hearing on the recommendations of the Charter Review Committee to the city charter. And I do just want to say as we get started, Councillor Sweeney is not with us tonight because he is on his honeymoon, which has been delayed from the beginning of the year when he got married. And so we hope that Councillor Sweeney is having a wonderful and safe trip. I assume he's not watching on BevCam, but if he is, Councillor Sweeney, we hope you're having a safe and wonderful time. So with that, we'll get right to our public hearing on the charter. Mr. Flaherty, the chair of the Charter Review Committee, is here with us. You presented as we opened this hearing at our last meeting. I don't know, Mr. Flaherty, if there's anything you'd like to say by way of getting into the meeting tonight.
No, I just think for the sake of time, let's hear from the public, and then we could, after the public hearing closes, then we could discuss what we need to do.
Perfect, thank you. So for folks being at home, Tim Flaherty, the chair of the Charter Review Committee, has presented to the council at our last meeting and is suggesting we jump right into the public comment, which we will do. So members of the public, I know some of you already had the opportunity to sign up to speak. If you are here for the 6 p.m. hearing on the city charter and you did not yet get to sign up, you can come up at any time and add your name, or just raise your hand to be recognized as we go through. Sometimes as the conversation unfolds, people feel that they would like to speak, and so I will recognize you at that time. Ms. Dixon, would you mind checking the list for who has signed up so far? Thank you. Thank you very much. And so I will actually then have Ms. Dixon turn this back around. Yep. Let's start with Mr. Grimes, please. If you would come, and then you can press the push button on the microphone. And even though we have it, if you would state your name and address for the record as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. My name is Charles F. Grimes, Esquire. I live at 116 Rantoul Street, number 310, here in Beverly. Honorable Council, and to those members of the Learned Review Committee who are present, I should start by saying that the current Review Committee has done an outstanding, thoughtful, and thorough job. It is exactly this kind of review that the 1995 Charter contemplated when requiring periodic review. Most of the proposed language is well-founded and has my support. That is not to say that I agree with everything proposed, but in the interest of time, I will only comment on a few issues. It'll take about 6 minutes. First, I believe that the proposed language regarding the budget management analyst is a significant improvement, but that it does not go quite far enough to make clear that the role of the budget management analyst is under the control of the City Council without any involvement in any aspect by the executive branch. Had you the report of the charter, and I will leave the notes behind, the language that I believe should be inserted appears on page 12, line 21 in the committee report as it has been drafted. I believe the language at that location is dangerously ambiguous. If an employee, quote unquote, whose employee? Under whose supervision? I believe that the entire first clause of that sentence should be stricken. The remaining sentence should be changed to say, quote, appropriation for the budget management analyst, end quote, rather than, quote, the salary for the position. Speaking of the budget management analyst, I believe that the budget management analyst and the director of municipal finance should both attend and both be allowed to speak at the annual budget meeting that is wisely proposed by the review committee. Second, I believe the charter should include explicit, indisputable language enabling the city council by 2/3 vote to increase the school department appropriation to an amount not exceeding that which the school committee submitted to the mayor pursuant to section 6.3b. Of course, this will seldom happen, since the final budget must still be in balance, which means that any increase to the schools will need to come from elsewhere in the budget. The change I propose would come by way of language to be added to section 6.7 in line 19 on page 47, as they appear in the committee report, by adding the following sentence. Quote, notwithstanding the prior sentence, the city council may, by 2/3 vote, increase the appropriation for the school committee to any amount not exceeding the amount submitted to the mayor pursuant to section 6.3b, end quote. Section 6.7 in the committee report should be further amended by adding to the end thereof the following language, quote, the final budget must be in balance, end quote. Third, the audit function needs to be better insulated from the influence of those being audited. The audit committee should not include the school business manager, the city finance director, or the city accountant. Rather, the city council can hire or reach into the community for whatever financial expertise may be needed. Fourth, I wanted to make a minor point. I believe the time for charter review under section 8.1 should be expanded to 18 months. This committee did a marvelous job with the time provided, especially with the complications of the pandemic, but I believe it takes more than a year for the review to be thoughtful. Fifth, I do not understand the rationale for elimination of the ward distribution requirement for under section 7.3a. That relates to the councilors at large. The ward distribution requirement is retained in other places in the charter, so I don't understand why it's deleted there. Sixth, and this may not make sense without the charter in front of you, regarding the proposed changes, I believe an editorial error has been made in page 26, line 2 and 3 as so appearing. It appears that some language from an earlier draft, though superseded, is nonetheless included in the report. Seventh, I have a technical draftsmanship suggestion. The pagination and line enumeration of the report makes discussions like tonight much simpler. Be better if you had the report in front of you, but that's the way it goes. However, each new printing format will have different pagination, and each amendment will change line enumeration. This will create a problem called version control. The problem can be resolved by adding language designating the last change date. Specifically, the citation format in section 1-2 should be the, quote, Beverly Home Rule Charter as of, inserting a particular date, end quote. Further, line enumeration should be within a particular section. Thus, the effect of changes to the text can be limited. Otherwise, every change affects the page line, the line designation for the whole rest of the document. The Charter Review Committee raised several questions for future consideration. First, I strongly oppose a 4-year mayor. I should say that this represents a reversal of the position that I took during the 1995 Charter Commission deliberations. However, a generation of experience under the existing charter has seen a steady flow of power out of the City Council into the office of mayor. Further, Beverly has a tradition of re-electing the mayors. Under this charter, we had 1 2-year mayor and 2 long-term mayors. If we have a 4-year term, the mayor would become virtually unbeatable, and it would become essentially a lifetime office. Serve until the pleasure of those who serve, of he or she who serves. Second, I believe the City Council needs guaranteed access to independent legal advice of its choosing, at least upon issues of its own power, including the ability to litigate. Finally, the appropriate role of the school committee after ed reform is quite limited. If fulfilling that role requires additional members, the addition of 2 district members seems reasonable. I want to thank the committee for its hard work, and I thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes. And I should note that Mr. Grimes did have a written version of his remarks, which will go to the city clerk's office and can be distributed to all counselors so you can see them in writing as well. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Grimes. I don't have the list in front of me, but I do know that Ms. McMahon is the next person on the list. So if you would like to come up and just, if you would, state your name and address for the record before you begin.
Good evening. My name is Joyce McMahon. I live at 15.5 Rowell Avenue in Beverly, Royal Side. I am here tonight representing a group of 8 counselors, 9, I take that back, 8 former counselors, 1 current counselor. We have discussed a certain aspect. It's taken many of us out of retirement. For those of you who don't know me, I was the Ward 3 counselor for 4 years from 1994 to 1997, and then counselor at large from 1998 to 2001, and have been enjoying retirement. You all will get to someday. I will start with a letter now that you all have a copy. So, dear Honorable Council, we, as current and former members of the Beverly City Council, respectfully request that you amend Section 6-10, Independent Audit, as presented in the recommendations of the Charter Review Committee as voted at committee's meeting of February 10th, 2022, for Beverly's Home Rule Charter. That's in Attachment 1. Our suggestion for amendment is with respect to the makeup of the Audit Committee. We make these suggestions to ensure that now and in the future, the City Council and the citizens of Beverly are guaranteed to have a truly independent annual audit of the city's finances. The City Council, through the annual audit, is the only check and balance to the executive branch, which, by design of democracy's founders, is essential for good government. The language of the existing charter that gives the City Council oversight of the audit, and I quote, "The City Council shall annually provide for an outside audit of the books and accounts of the city to be made by a certified public accountant or firm of such accountants," end quote, was called into question in 2016 so the Charter Review Committee might rightly identified that revised language could provide greater clarity at this time. We agree, but believe that the committee's recommendation as presented does not sufficiently protect the independent audit function and instead puts the city up at significant risk. We ask that you amend the recommendation and enshrine best practices in the charter for conducting an independent review of the city's finances each year. Without the City Council having full voting control in selection of the independent audit function, the current wording of the proposed charter revision would at a minimum set up an adversarial relationship between the Audit Committee and the Council, and at worst effectively negate this and future City Council's ability to provide an independent review of the city's books. Without such independent review, the city could be left open to financial mismanagement and ruin. If you don't think that's a possibility, we suggest you look no further back than 1992, when it was revealed that the city of Beverly had an $8.5 million deficit. The city's bond rating was reduced to junk status. The city couldn't set its tax rate. Services were cut across the board. Fire stations were closed. City Hall was closed to the public during each day due to lack of staffing. Talk of receivership was real, and there was much finger-pointing at that time that went on between the mayor and the Board of Aldermen for how the city got into that condition. The headlines were horrifying. Quote, Beverly's credit rating is junk. Mayor was warned 6 months ago. That's from the Salem News, October 1st, 1992. Crisis royals cities calm. Beverly loses image of fiscal soundness. Boston Globe, October 29th, 1992. Aldermen set to gut city departments. No frills government at hand. Salem News, December 18th, 1992. Among the most relevant articles to the audit topic was in the Beverly Times, December 11th, 1992. The title was Deficit Probe Reveals Errors. An alderman at large, quote, acknowledged aldermen in recent years failed to review annual audit reports, and that the, quote, sewer project accounting mistake cropped up in the fiscal 1989 audit, which is about the time that the mayor switched auditing firms, end quote. Subsequent changes to the city's charter were made to prevent such a situation from happening again. The changes included moving to a strong mayor form of government and ensuring that the city council could have access to regular independent financial reports via the council's budget management analyst. Excuse me. Any changes adopted this year should further strengthen the sound practices we now expect from our city government and not weaken them and take us backwards. Many of us who signed this letter were elected just after the 1992 deficit was revealed and ran with a common goal to help fix the problems and bring financial stability back to Beverly. Other signers came in the years that follow and again were committed to ensure the city did not find opportunity to go down such a perilous path again. Truly, it took years to overcome the deficit and balance the books. Our suggestions for an amendment to the proposed audit committee language comes from the Government Finance Officers Association, which represents public finance officials throughout the United States and Canada, and whose mission is to advance the excellence in public finance. They outline best practices for audit committees on their website at gfoa.org/materials/audit-committees. The GFOA notes, quote, an audit committee is a practical means for a governing body to provide much-needed independent review and oversight of the government's financial reporting processes, internal controls, and independent auditors. An audit committee also provides a forum separate from management in which auditors and other interested parties can candidly discuss concerns. By effectively carrying out its functions and responsibilities, an audit committee helps to ensure that management properly develops and adheres to a sound system of internal controls, that procedures are in place to objectively assess management's practices, and that the independent auditors, through their own review, objectively assess government's financial reporting practices. Among the GFOA's recommended best practices is that, quote, all members of the audit committee should be members of the governing body, and to ensure the committee's independence and effectiveness, No governing body member who exercises managerial responsibilities that fall within the scope of the audit should serve as a member of the audit committee. As currently written, the proposed language in section 6-10 is contrary to best practice, given it includes 3 members who exercise managerial responsibilities that fall within the scope of the audit. Therefore, our suggestions for an amendment include: 1, putting the balance of voting members of the audit committee in favor of city council appointed members, and 2, changing the individuals representing the administration and reducing the number of the same. As detailed in the report, the committee voted 3-2 to adopt edits to the proposed audit committee that results in a committee consisting of only 2 council-related members and 3 members who would be subjects of the audit, that is, the city's finance director, the city accountant, and the Beverly School business manager. We find this very troubling, as this goes against best practices because those who would be the subject of the audit would have the majority vote in the committee, and thus potentially negating the independence of the audit of any future administration's books and accounts. We believe that key among ensuring that history does not repeat itself is maintaining the sanctity of the independent audit function and keeping it fully in control of the City Council. Amending the proposed language in Section 6.10 is a first step in that right direction. It is respectfully submitted by Stacy Ames, a Charter Committee member and former Ward 3 councilor, Hannah Bowen, Charter Committee member, Councilor at Large, Scott DeLay, Councilor at Large from 2012 to 2013, Patricia Grimes, who was Ward 6 councilor from 2004 to 2007 and Councilor at Large from 2008 to 2011, Kevin Hoban, who was Ward 4 councilor from 2004 to 2011, myself, as I noted, Ward 3 councilor 1994 to 97 and Councilor at Large 1998 to 2001, Bruce Nardella, Council President of 1994 to 1997, Wes Slate, Ward 2 Councilor from 2008 to 2014 and retired Beverly City Clerk, and Maureen Trubataris, Ward 1 Councilor, 1992 to 2014. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McMahon, and thank you also for your service to the city. And it should be noted that although Mr. Charlie Grimes was at the podium, Pat Grimes, former Councilor Pat Grimes, is also here in the audience with us, and thank you for your service as well. Thank you very much for your time, Ms. McMahon. Are there other members of the public, either in person or on remote access with us, who would like to speak? If you would come on up to the podium and give your name and address for the record, please. I realize it's not really a podium as much as a table, but if you would sit at the small table and give your name and address for the record before you begin.
We're adaptive. Good evening, councilors and members of the committee. My name is Pauline Zikos. I'm a resident of 35 High Street in Beverly. Excuse me. I originally came here this evening to speak specifically on the notion of the term of the mayor, but listening to the 2 previous speakers, I'd like to make 2 brief comments. I concur very significantly with the concerns around the need for an independent audit process. And listening carefully to both, I think there was a number of very, very pertinent and very specific suggestions, which I hope the council will take to heart. I do believe that any individuals that have a responsibility in their managerial other fiduciary roles in the operation of the fiscal aspects of the city should not be part of the audit process, at least in terms of a voting component. And I agree with Mr. Grimes relative to the importance of having it very clearly and unambiguously stated that the budget analyst works for and on behalf of the city council independently of any executive agent in the city. Specifically to the recommendation to, I should also mention, I want to thank the members of the the committee that worked on this. I think it was very thoughtful, very careful deliberations, and I think their recommendations in large part, serve if they're adopted, will serve this community very well now into the near future. So I thank you, everyone who was in that role. Relative to the changing of the term of the mayor from 2 years to 4 years, I support this. And I was listening to what Mr. Grimes said, and I think there's some reasons to consider maintaining it. But I think what is compelling to changing it to a 4-year term is the business, the actual municipal business, the nitty-gritty is very complex today. While it was never been easy to run a city, I think with all the vagaries of modern American life, it's even more so. And if a individual is elected as mayor, no sooner have they been elected than if they're serving a 2-year term, they immediately have to start thinking about re-election. And I think it's very important that the individual is given time to establish himself or herself in the role to understand the breadth of issues and to develop suitable responses. I have a lot of faith in the voters here in the city, and while I recognize there is concern that if an individual gets into office, they can languish in that office and not in the service of the best service of the city. But I think the voters are involved enough to minimize that concern. I'd rather see our chief executive focus significantly on the business of running the municipality and not be unnecessarily distracted, at least initially, from having to be concerned about re-election. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Linzikos. Thank you for your time and for your comments. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in this public hearing? While we pause for a moment, I'll just give everyone a chance to decide if the spirit's moving you. I do want to thank Councillor Rand, who is helping to be my eyes. There are a few other folks in the room that I'd like to just acknowledge and thank for being here. Our city solicitor, Stephanie Williams, is here with us this evening. Our city council budget analyst, Jerry Perry, is here with us. And also, Mr. Perry was extremely instrumental in working with the Charter Review Committee. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for your time on that. Of course, I did mention Charter Review Committee Chair Tim Flaherty, but I should note that he is also himself a former city councilor. So I should thank you, too, for your service to the city as a former city councilor. Also, our Greater Beverly Chamber Director, Leslie Gould, is here with us. Leslie, it's nice to have you in the audience always. And I did also just see the mayor come in the school, but I don't see him yet. So when he comes in, we'll acknowledge him again and thank him for being here. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? And that includes any members who are joining us remotely. And just a reminder, I know some people are joining us remotely as we go. So if you are on with us remotely and would like to speak as part of the public hearing, you can type into the chat function your name and address for the record, and that will allow us to be able to call on you. Mr. Flaherty, at this point, I don't know if you would like to say any other words before we move towards closing this public hearing. Will be referred back to legal affairs when we close the public hearing portion. And at that point, once in subcommittee and legal affairs, Councillor Rand, as chairperson of legal affairs, will work with her committee and the committee of the whole to be able to have further discussion on this topic before it comes to a vote. Solicitor Williams, would you like to?
It's my understanding that the mayor was going to be present tonight to make comments at the public hearing. So I'm not sure. You said he just came into the building. If he's going to, you may want to not close the public hearing.
I agree with you. I do. That was my understanding as well. So I would
Yes.
sort of talk slowly.
Okay.
I will talk slowly.
Okay, I can go see where he is.
But I also appreciate you coming up because you also talked slowly. That was helpful.
Yeah, that was somewhat deliberate. And I think that the same holds true, with respect to if you want me to make comments, because then it allows the public to, hear during the public hearing period what officials are saying and gives them an opportunity, if they feel like speaking again, to do so.
Yes. And I definitely will open the floor for counselors as well. I didn't know if, Solicitor Williams, are there other comments you'd like to make at this time?
I think that right now, so I do have comments, but they're more of a sort of a nitpicky, technical nature. I think the substantive issues are matters that the mayor intends to communicate to you.
And that was a good segue because the mayor is here. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us. I know you just walked into the library, but I wondered if you would like to come and offer any of your thoughts on the charter at this point, the Charter Review Committee's report, as we move through our public hearing. And again, thank you to the members of the public who've already spoken. If you're just joining us and you would like to speak in the context of the public hearing, if you're online remotely with us, you can type your name and address into the chat function, and we will be able to call on you then. And members of the public who are in person will continue to have time up until our 7 p.m. regular meeting, when we'll need to convene that meeting to take comments. So you can continue to raise your hand if you would like to speak. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Of course. Thank you, Madam President. It's good to see everybody. I want to thank those of you who served on the Charter Review Committee, as well as other members of the community who did so. A lot of really thoughtful work has gone into this, and I appreciate it very much. As a result, there's not a lot for me to comment on in terms of concerns, but why don't I share those that I do have? This one's really more, I think, an editing point. If you look at if you look at section 211D, the language that you accepted that was accepted by committee 61721, I think has a little bit of a vestige of some other language in it. It's about vacancy in the office of city councilor in the last 6 months of a term. And it talks then about whoever gets elected at the next regular municipal election. And it says the person shall be filled at the next regular municipal election by the person who receives the highest number of votes for councilor at large. As I said, I think that's a vestige of looking back to the prior election, because at this point, you'd have 3 people being elected in November. So I don't think you want that particular piece of language. Again, I just flag it. It may do what it's intended to do, but it just caught my eye, and I was kind of stumbling on it. So let me go to a few concerns that I have. I asked about this through Mr. Perry after he met with the solicitor and Mr. Ailes and me back in November, and that was the question of a ward councilor or a ward school committee member who moves out of the ward but stays in the city. And I just flag it as an issue of concern because for however long that person may no longer be living in the ward they were elected to represent, you could find residents of that ward expressing concern or discontent that they don't feel fully represented. I mean, they'll have their large representation, but they won't have a ward councilor living in the ward. So, I flag it as a concern. I think you probably talked some about it already. Maybe you'll revisit that. On the vacancy in office of mayor, what I want to flag is you seem to have expressed, I know I'm referring to the committee in their recommendations to the city council. So I'll say the committee seems to have expressed a desire, a determination, or a value that if there's a vacancy in the office of mayor in the first 17 months of a 24-month term, that there should be a special election held. I would ask you folks to look to the language throughout the proposals and try to plan for, and I'd say put language to paper that is ready to be put in place if a four-year term for mayor is approved by the voters, right? That's one of the recommendations, and it would need to go to the voters. And so if that passes, now you've got a 48-month term, and I don't think it's the intent of the Charter Committee that from months 18 through 48, that there wouldn't be a special election. It would seem that if 17 months is the language that exists at present, you would want to just add 24 months to that if it becomes a four-year term. That makes sense? Happy to try to answer a question, but. So that's a thought there. And then, as I said, there's much in here that I think is fantastic work. There are just a few things that I should express that I don't support. I know that, Madam President, you had asked me, if there were things, and there certainly are a few. Mayoral appointment and removal powers. I don't support the changes to sections 3.3 and 3.4. There's language that would mandate a school committee city council budget meeting called by the mayor. I don't support that. I believe that there is a lot of process built into the budget process already, and in fact, in practice, our existing joint city council school committee meeting has really over the years become a meeting that's intentionally scheduled in this window of time. I think it addresses those opportunities, those needs and opportunities. And I don't support the deletion in section 3.2 of the language referring to the mayor as chief procurement officer. Let's see. I think that's all I need to speak to, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Solicitor Williams, would you like to add anything at this time? And then I will circle back to see if members of the public would like to speak and open, with whatever time we have remaining before our regular meeting, open the floor for counselors, with the understanding there will be more time for conversation amongst counselors as this process moves along. And of course, the public is welcome to join us in person or watching any of those meetings, even if they are subcommittee meetings. Thank you, Solicitor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, councilors. I do have some comments now, or questions. So on page 13, it's in the office, section 2.8, officers elected by city council. One thing I wanted to flag, it's page 13, lines 5 and 6. There's an insertion of language that the budget management analyst shall have those duties and responsibilities as determined by the ordinance. I suggest that there be a discussion about what that exactly means, because I think that it's if there are additional duties, those should be articulated in the charter. It's difficult. In fact, you really can't pass an ordinance that conflicts with the charter. So I'm not sure what the intention of that language was, but I suggest that perhaps that's something that you may want to look a little bit more closely at.
And Solicitor, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think for people behind you, it seems like, and this might have been true for the mayor as well, but it's hard for them to hear. So I don't know. I know you'll feel like you're yelling at us, but if you can.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm sorry.
It's mostly because the microphones are only for BevCam, so
Am
we're
I
not
supposed
being
to be
well
pushing
amplified.
this?
No, you don't have to push it.
Okay.
It's coming through really well on BevCam,
right.
I think.
Okay, if you can't hear me, can you?
If you mask.
I prefer not to,
She
actually.
doesn't want to take my mask to her.
I can stand over here.
I was going to say, do you want to stand? And then
I can stand over here.
thank you very much.
Sure,
Sorry,
of
Solicitor.
course. So that's one idea that, or one item I would like to point out to you. And then the next one is on page 17, which is in section 4, or 2-9, subsection D, which is reconsideration. That there was a change in there that was agreed upon of 72 hours for reconsideration. And I noticed that language that has been added that says subject to council rules. This is the same idea as my comment that I previously mentioned, which is, well, what in fact does that mean? And I think there needs to be clarity around that. If we don't know what it means, I think it should come out. I do agree with the mayor's comment on section 211, vacancy in the office of counselor at large. That may be a drafting oversight, and I think that needs to be revisited. That's subsection D. I think that there is a vestige from the previous section of the charter that was dropped that I think needs to be inserted back in there. And I believe it would be a city councilor who received the largest number of votes who is not currently serving. If I know the mayor had mentioned concern about deleting section 3(4) of the charter, which pertains to the powers of removal of the mayor. Currently, there's a replacement, which is section 815, that pertains to removal by the mayor, city council, and appointees of department heads. For many, many months, this committee's approved language was that the mayor and the city council have to articulate reasons for the removal. I believe at their February 2022 meeting, that was changed to cause, have to be removed for cause. I flagged that as a concern that I have. That has a very particular meaning in employment law. And it is something that I suggest that you revisit in terms of the constraints that it puts on both the mayor and the city council if cause is required for removal. Keeping in mind that there are plenty of legal protections afforded to people with respect to removal. They can't be removed for matters that violate public policy. I think that in section 37B, 38B, there's a last sentence. It says the city clerk shall be the sole judge in determining the application of this subsection. This pertains to whether or not there's enough time to hold a municipal election if there's a vacancy in the office of mayor. I think that's vague, and I suggest that further discussion is warranted around that, and perhaps an invitation to the city clerk to explain exactly how she would determine whether or not sufficient time exists. I think there are many deadlines established by general laws, and so we want to make sure there's no discretion, ultimately. And that may be it. I already commented on 815. So I think for now, that's what I have. I obviously will be available throughout this process, to discuss this with you further and to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Solicitor Williams. I will. Oh, okay. Before I do see a hand from Mr. Grimes, and I will circle back to members of the public. I just want to mention, as a few other folks have joined us online, if you are joining us remotely and wish to participate in the 6 p.m. public hearing on the report from the City Charter Review Committee, you can indicate in the chat function by typing your name and address for the record that you would like to speak. And Ms. Dixon, who is here with me today from the clerk's office, and I will be monitoring that chat to make sure that you are called on. At this point, being mindful of the time, I do want to circle back to members of the public and just check in. Mr. Grimes, would you like to come back to the table?
Thank you very much. I have two brief comments. With regard to the mayor's comment that this charter should be drafted to consider the possibility that the voters may subsequently adopt a longer mayoral term, and that the issue he raised in section 3.8 in which the language says during the first 17 months of the term. The problem, again, is that 24 months. I would suggest that language be changed to a percentage. If the vacancy shall occur in the first, I haven't done math, but I think it's approximately 70%. So it could be expressed that way, and then whatever the mayoral term was, a simple calculator could tell us whether it applies. Second, a minor point, and it may be a way down in the weeds, but I note in the comments of the city solicitor, the pagination she cited is not the same as the pagination in the version of the report that was posted online. It's not far off. It's a page or two, a line or two. That's why I suggest that the whole pagination issue needs to be addressed. I recall after the 95 charter, pursuant to the statute, there was a reprint of the charter bound with the regulation, with the ordinance, et cetera, which of course had entirely different pagination than the actual charter that had been submitted to the voters. So that's the problem we're talking about that needs in some ways to be solved. Thank you so much. That's the only comments I had. I'd be glad to answer any questions if anyone has questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes.
Thank you.
Any comments from members of the public at this time before I open it briefly to counselors? And again, just with the reminder that even once this public hearing portion of the charter process is closed and it's referred back to legal affairs, those meetings are open to members of the public to come and participate by watching, joining with us, or watching us on BevCam. And of course, you can always continue to send your comments to us via email. Call your counselors. We're still very much accessible. Okay. Oh, Solicitor Williams. Sorry.
I want to make it clear, if you close the public hearing, the public can't make additional comment in subcommittee.
Right.
Okay.
They can attend and be part of that. Hearing counselors. I think that's what's. I'm sorry. I want to be clear that you will be able to still hear conversation amongst counselors even if it doesn't happen tonight.
May I ask a question of the city solicitor?
Yes. Would you just come to the microphone just for BevCam to be able to pick you up, Mr. Grimes? Thank you.
I think the point is very well taken. The close of the hearing is the close of the hearing. My question to the city solicitor is, does that rule apply to later written submissions of comments?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please, Solicitor.
In my opinion, yes. If you're closing the public hearing tonight, that closes all public comment, including later submitted submissions. You could, if you chose to, not close the public hearing and just say, we are planning on concluding public comment as of tonight, if you have concerns about that. But I don't believe that it's possible to accept written statements after the public hearing has been closed.
Thank you. If we were to do that, Solicitor, what I want to do is be able to put it to allow legal affairs to begin to have some work on this. Can they do that if the public hearing remains open, even if public comment is closed?
So that's a tricky one, and that's sort of what we ran into before. So my thinking had been, if you want to send it to a subcommittee, then I think the public hearing would be closed. You could keep it at committee of the whole and continue.
Thank you. Mr. Grimes.
If I may respectfully suggest, the public comment period don't close this hearing, extend public comment to end the day before your proposed subcommittee meeting, which then means the subcommittee, when it meets, has all public comment both here and written in front of it. So set a date, closing on that date, the day before the committee is to meet. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes. Solicitor Williams.
So I understand the suggestion and the desire to do that. I think one of the things that would concern me is that a public hearing is a place where everybody can hear what everybody else is saying. And so if written comments come in after the fact, there could be folks who are online in the meeting tonight listening and maybe not commenting because they haven't heard anything that they feel compelled to comment on. And then I would have a concern if the council is then receiving written comments after the fact and considering those. So I think you may run into trouble, and I think you either close the public hearing tonight and be done with it, or you can say we're done with public comment, but then I think there's an issue with sending it to subcommittee and leaving the public hearing open.
Thank you. But we can leave it open and send it to committee of the whole, cross-posted with legal affairs.
Well, I would just keep it, I would just continue on with your agenda and just say you're tabling it for tonight. And I don't think you need to send it to committee of the whole. I think it's probably best practice just to keep it with the city council if you want to continue the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rand, when is legal affairs next scheduled to meet?
We had tentatively planned for April 25th if the public hearing closed tonight. So.
Okay.
I do have
Councilor
one
Rand.
question, though. I understand that the public hearing process. I'm curious, though, any constituent could reach out to me and share their thoughts or comments about this. It just wouldn't be part of the public process, correct? So if somebody who's not here tonight or didn't participate wanted to just say, here's what I think, that could be my own individual counselor's kind of input from constituents, separate from public hearing. Is there any reason not to think that? Through you to the solicitor.
Solicitor Williams, would you be willing to respond to Councilor Rand, and then Councilor St. Hilaire, I see your hand.
I think that's fine. I think we certainly can't expect your constituents to not communicate with you, and I think if you receive something, you can read it. It won't become part of the record and shouldn't, I don't think, it fairly be shared with the entire council.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. Councilor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, there's a lot in this charter, and I know we're having some comments tonight from the public, and as we continue to engage in this conversation, it strikes me that there may be more. I'm sorry. Strikes me there may be more interest in these topics as we proceed, and I think it might be wise to continue the public hearing to allow for more opportunities for the public. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Councilor St. Hilaire. And Councilor Husman, I see your hand. I'm mindful we have only 2 minutes, so I will come to you. Your thinking matches what I just sent to Ms. Dixon, which is I know, Councilor Rand, this would change your schedule, but my thinking is that our May 2nd meeting is unlikely to have a continuation of the National Grid hearing because of the availability of our outside counsel for that issue. And so this hearing and another chance for public comment could be taken at that time. Councilor Houseman.
Yeah, I just concur that I think it's important. I'm not sure how much general public awareness there is around the charter, and I think that as becomes more public awareness, there may be, it's a very important issue. I think we should arrange our procedures in a way that enables us to hear from the public for a longer period of time than we already have. So I would strongly favor whatever the procedural measure is, have a result that the public is able to speak for a longer, comment for a longer period of time. Thank you.
So with that, then I would entertain a motion to recess this public hearing and be able to continue public comment at our May 2nd meeting at 8:15 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. And so with that, I'm going to recess this public hearing to our May 2nd meeting, 8:15 p.m. We will continue to take public comment from those who are interested at that time. And I thank you again, everyone, members of the public who came tonight and commented. Members of the public who joined us remotely, thank you also to Charter Review Committee Chair, Mr. Flaherty, for being here with us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Solicitor Williams, for your assistance as well. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting of the City Council.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. And we'll adjourn this special meeting of the City Council. And City Council members will pick up with our regular meeting in a minute or two. Ms. Dixon just needs a moment to change over the sign-in sheets for the public hearings. Thank you very much, everyone.
one. That's the kind of stuff that you just open them on. It's very tiring.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So before we officially call this meeting to order, I just wanted to run down, as we like to do, sort of what's on the agenda for the evening. We do have one public hearing at 8 p.m. It's a continuation of our public hearing on Order 65, National Grid, New England Power Company petition for transmission line franchise. So wherever we are in the agenda, when we reach 8 p.m., we will need to pause what we are doing and call that public hearing to order. And I always think it's important just to note that, because it may necessitate me appearing to rudely interrupt somebody. And it's just because we do need to open the public hearing at the legally posted time. We also have some routine business to take care of. We do have some subcommittee work that we'll take care of on the floor tonight, because we are offering a remote meeting. So we won't break for committee work, because that's not possible for the public to join us remotely for that. And so some of the votes will be happening on the floor. So with that, I will go through a few special pieces of information for remote access. I do want to say, if there are members of the public who are here and intend to speak or would like to speak in the 8 p.m. public hearing, there is a sign-up sheet on the table here at the front. You can come up at any time and sign up. If you are joining us remotely and would like to speak in the 8 p.m. public hearing, you can add your name and address in the comment section, and Ms. Dixon and I will be monitoring that to make sure that people are called on in order. So as a preliminary matter for this hybrid city council meeting on Tuesday, April 19th, this is Julie Flowers, president of the Beverly City Council. Before beginning the meeting, I am confirming that all members of the public on Google Meet can hear me. Mr. Dole, may I use you again for a test if you're still there? Oh, I got a thumbs up from another member of the public. Thank you very much, Bill. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person, and we do have in-person attendees from the public, or via virtual means, and we do have members of the public attending virtually. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location as posted, Beverly Middle School, where we find ourselves now. And it is possible that any or all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This evening, all city councilors are attending in person publicly, and so we will not need to take roll call votes for the majority of our votes. The meeting may be accessed remotely via Google Meet at the link posted, meet.google.com/mcn-fnhj-joi. Phone number to dial in, 1-240-428-7462 with a PIN 567-957-332#. Hashtag for people younger than me. When required by law or allowed by the chairpersons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting, people may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely, as noted above. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast live in real time. Thank you, Kim from BevCam, by watching Channel 99 or watching BevCam's YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/BevCamTV, and clicking into the BevCam government channel. So with that, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Ms. Dixon, would you please call the roll?
Councillor Bowen? Here. Crowley? Here. Feldman? Here. Hausman?
Here.
Rand?
Here.
Rotundo?
Here.
St. Hilaire?
Here.
Sweeney and Flowers.
I am here. Thank you very much. Councillor Bowen, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much, Councillor Bowen. Because we do have members of the public joining us remotely, and this is a hybrid meeting, I'm going to read Rule 22, and then we will take a roll call vote to determine if the council agrees to be able to handle matters that might have gone to subcommittee on the floor. Rule 22, all subcommittees of the council shall cause records to be kept of their proceedings. They shall report by ordinance, order, or resolve unless otherwise provided by law. No subcommittee shall act by separate consultation, and no report of as a body shall be received unless agreed in subcommittee, actually notified and assembled for the purpose in hand, and signed by a majority of the councilors of the subcommittee. Every subcommittee to which any subject may be referred shall report thereon as soon as possible, after full consideration thereof and a vote thereon. However, if the council may, by majority vote, order any matter pending before subcommittee to be acted upon the subcommittee at its next meeting and or to be forthwith returned to the full council. So I would entertain a motion now, and this will be a roll call vote to determine if we can handle some of our subcommittee work on the floor this evening.
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon, would you call the roll?
Bowen? Yes. Crowley? Yes. Feldman?
Yes.
Hausman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo?
Yes.
St. Hilaire?
Yes.
Sweeney and Flowers.
Thank you very much. I'm a yes. And so the motion carries 8-0. And I do want to note for those who are just joining us for this meeting, Councillor Sweeney is not with us tonight because he is on his honeymoon. So congratulations to Councillor Sweeney, and we wish him a really good trip. With that, before we get to our public hearing, I also want to note thanks to Ms. Dixon, our Assistant City Clerk, who is here for Ms. Kent this evening. Ms. Kent could not be with us. And so Ms. Dixon, thank you for being here this evening. I also want to say thank you to our budget analyst, Mr. Jerry Perry, who is here with us this evening. And some of you have already been introduced, I know, but we're in a whole new meeting. Greater Beverly Chamber Director, Leslie Gould, you're still here with us, and it's still a pleasure to have you here with us this evening. Thank you. There she is. School Superintendent Dr. Suzanne Trocheck is here with us. Thank you very much, Dr. Trocheck. And I do see the Mayor's Constituent Services Director, Ronnie Jacobson, is here, as well as Assistant City Solicitor Beth Oldmixon. Thank you for being here. And we do have Assistant City Solicitor Jesse Dole joining us remotely as well. Did I miss? Mr. Ailes. There you are. And our City Finance Director, Brian Ailes. Usually this line of sight problem happens with Ms. Jacobson and I, but tonight it's Mr. Ailes and me. We do have two public speakers, and so we'll go, citizen speakers, we'll go right to those with the reminder that if you're joining us and hoping to speak in the 8 p.m. public hearing, continued on the Order 65 matter with National Grid's grant of location for a transmission franchise, you can sign up to do so either on the piece of paper here at the small table, or if you're joining us remotely by typing your name and address into the chat, and Ms. Dixon and I will be watching for that so we can call on members of the public in order. At this time, though, we do have two citizen speakers. These are folks who have signed up with the city clerk no later than 9:30 the morning of the meeting to be able to speak for no more than 5 minutes each, and we'll start with Mr. Fred Hobbs. And a reminder, too, these microphones are different than city council chambers. So when you are ready to speak, you press the push button. And when the microphone becomes green, you are ready to speak. And when you're done speaking, especially for my fellow councilors, to minimize cross noise, if you could press it again. These microphones are only for BevCam. They do not project in the room. So again, a reminder to all of us to project our voices as we speak. Mr. Hobbs, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Council President, for the opportunity to speak to the City Council, and thank you all for the opportunity to talk about the recent contract with Kearsarge Energy to develop multiple photovoltaic sites in Beverly. And I wanted to take a moment to recognize Dr. Coleman as the founder of the site back in 1981. And as an MIT professor, he inspected nuclear facilities around the world for the International Atomic Energy Agency. And he believed that clean energy could one day replace the fossil fuel and nuclear supply infrastructure. As a black man, he stood strong for cultural transformation on many levels. I had the good fortune to meet him when I taught engineering and technology at the Beverly High School. He needed help to renovate the hillside solar system, which had fallen into disrepair. And from that point on, he's inspired me to advocate for clean energy. I was able to do a series of upgrades at the site, and in 2011, when the new Beverly High School was completed, the building was receiving solar power from the new rooftop array as well as from the old hillside array. He didn't live long enough to see the solar power industry take off in 2007, but his advocacy helped inspire a new industry because prior to the site in Beverly, it was uncertain that such a facility could supply so much power. Kearsarge Energy and the city under Mayor Cahill deserve a lot of credit for persisting in making this citywide project come to fruition, and this project will help us obtain the 100% municipal electricity goal. I believe this project is an extension of Dr. Coleman's vision. There is an uphill battle to fight the climate crisis, but we need to support projects and policy here in Massachusetts to lead the way for the region and the nation. There is pending legislation at the State House now which can establish sensible environmental energy policy, and I hope that the city council, and citizens of Beverly will make their voices heard to create a groundswell of support. In terms of the Solar Now board, we are interested in developing an educational facility at the inverter house at the base of the solar field, and we got a grant from the CPC to conduct that. So we look forward to working with the city and volunteers to make that a place where the story of the solar field can be told by anybody, and teachers and citizens. I also want to make a brief announcement that there will be an EV event here on Saturday. So if anybody's interested in buying an EV or just interested in the new sorts of vehicles that are going to be sweeping the nation within the next 5 years, come here on Saturday at 10 o'clock as part of Earth Day celebration. And also there is Green Beverly is sponsoring an Earth Day festivity at Lynch Park on Sunday from 1 to 4. And I'd like to invite you all, as the old 100 kW PV site will soon be renovated, we're holding an Earth Day celebration on that same day, this Sunday at 5 o'clock, to recognize the first and oldest solar site of its kind. We will acknowledge the indigenous first stewards of the land and share our hopes and thoughts about the clean energy future. This symbolic and pioneering solar facility inspired an industry that created a vision for a fossil-free future. So I hope you can join us at the Inverter House next to the high school Sunday at 5, and we'll take a nostalgic, sentimental, educational, spiritual walk around the solar field. So thank you for your time, and let's not forget the legacy of the solar field and our role in going forward as a community. Thank you all for your work and your interest, and I hope we can move forward in great leaps and bounds because there is so much work left to be done. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hops. And I think we would be remiss to not also recognize the way that you have really stewarded this stream and helped Beverly move in this direction yourself. You've been a long-time fixture of care, dedication for that solar site, and also for the vision of what a clean energy future could be. So I think we owe you a profound amount of thanks as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that recognition. And I as an individual, I just would like to say that I'm carrying on Dr. Coleman's mission. So I'm really just piggybacking on his efforts and wishing to take that into new realms. So I hope we all can share that vision and do our part as well. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Mr. Hops. Our second citizen speaker today is Carol Rayne. Carol, would you like to come to the table, please? And you have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. I'm happy to be, oh wait, do I need to press the button? No, it's green.
No, you're good.
I'm happy to be doing this as part of a group of Beverly citizens who feel very strongly how important it is to have a land acknowledgement statement at the beginning of each city council meeting. As we gather here in this place, we acknowledge and honor the original indigenous inhabitants of this land, the Namkeg and Pawtucket bands of the Massachusetts tribal nation, which continues today through the membership of the Massachusetts tribe. We acknowledge their ancestral and continued connection to this land. We also recognize our obligations to this land, to better environmental care and stewardship, to which the indigenous people who care for it have long called us. As we work toward diversity equity, and inclusion. We acknowledge the importance of lifting up and inviting in many voices, including those of Indigenous people, and of including these voices and perspectives in our discourse, in our decision-making, and in our actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rayne, for being here with us this evening. So with that, we have time to take care of some of our regular council business before we get to our 8 p.m. scheduled hearing. And the first of those items is that we need to accept minutes of previous meetings. We have 3 sets of minutes to accept. Minutes from our special city council meeting, April 4th, 2022. Minutes from our Finance and Property Committee of the Whole meeting, April 11th, 2022. And minutes from our Public Services Committee of the Whole Committee meeting, April 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to accept all 3 sets of minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0. Ms. Dixon, let's go to communications from His Honor the Mayor, please.
Sorry. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly Emergency Management Massachusetts Task Force 1 has been awarded a $75,000 Medical Reserve Corps COVID-19 Respond, Innovate, Sustain, and Equip RISE grant award from the National Association of County and City Health Officials. This grant funding will provide resources to support COVID-19 response efforts for our Emergency Management Department. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and mayoral approval before any grant to the city can be expended for its prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant by taking action on this matter at your upcoming meeting of the City Council on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. This is an example of something that we can take a motion on the floor at this time. And I do want to remind all of us to really speak up. I think for members of the audience, it may be hard to hear us because the microphones are for BevCam only. So do your best preach your voice. Mr. Ailes, I don't know if you would like to comment on this grant at all?
If there are any questions,
Okay. Is there a motion to accept this grant?
So moved.
Any other discussion or questions? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. I did just have a question about how it's planned to be spent. And, you know, I think we've heard some of the wonderful things that the task force does, but looking forward, is this future programming, continued COVID response?
So,
or is it backfilling response that's already taken place?
I wish I had the answer for you. So these grants, as they get developed through our grants department, they don't always filter their way through finance department unless there's some complexity to them or something a little more nuanced. If you'd like, I can make a phone call offline and get you that answer. If you're not comfortable voting on it, we can, you know, you can always table it and we can come back, or I can get you an answer shortly after the meeting.
All set, Councillor Bowen.
Yes, and it's when these come through and they're a cover letter with just the sort of amount and title, my assumption is generally that we'll have some discussion at the meeting. So I did not, especially with the holiday this weekend, I did not follow up to get more of that information ahead of a vote because I was anticipating some of that discussion here. So while overall the purpose looks great, and I know our role in these grants is really just to, hear that purpose and welcome the money in for its intended use in the city. Would like to hear a sentence or two if we can get that.
Councillor Houseman, I see your hand.
Yeah, if I may, I'd just like to voice support for Councillor Bowen's request to get more information about the money that comes in and how it's going to be spent before we take a vote to approve it. Thank you.
Mr. Ailes, you may not have this information. Is there a time sensitivity around acceptance of this grant, or?
I'm in process.
You're okay. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to table this conversation until we have the information.
So moved.
Councillor St. Hilaire.
Just had a comment, I support the desire to understand where the money is going, but I really couldn't imagine a scenario where we're not going to accept $75,000 for the Beverly Emergency Management Department for COVID relief. So I would be comfortable approving this and, certainly would be interested in knowing what's going on with it. But I think for me, I'm comfortable.
Thank you, Councillor St. Hilaire.
Second?
I'm sorry, Councillor Rand. Are you seconding the motion to table?
Yeah.
Okay. Which, Councillor St. Hilaire, I appreciate your point, and my hope is just that we can table it long enough to give Mr. Ailes the chance to get that information that he's working to get at this time. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm in favor.
Okay, so what is that,
5-3. Thank you. 4. 4-4.
Yeah. I'm opposed.
It's 4-4.
Do we have to raise our hand? Okay, I was opposed.
It does not pass. All right. So with that, then, I think with the motion not passing, I would entertain a motion to approve the grant.
So moved.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Yes.
I'll also abstain.
6-0 with 2 abstentions. Thank you. When you're ready, Ms. Dixon, we'll go we'll go to order 109 when you're ready.
Order number 109. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to review and recommendation, Ms. Judith Cronin, 33 Middlebury Lane, Beverly, to serve on the Beverly Golf and Tennis Commission. Her term is to be effective until February 1st, 2025. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill.
Thank you very much. I know we did use Rule 22. We can take some business on the floor, but mayoral appointments automatically require a wait time, and so this will be referred to the Committee on Public Services as usual, please.
Order number 110. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to review and recommendation, Ms. Robin D. Donato, 51 Parramatta Road, Beverly, to serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Her term is to be effective until December 31st, 2024. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services as well.
Order number 111. Dear Honorable City Council, I respectfully request that you approve a budget transfer of $90,000 into the Department of Public Services General Fund budget to fund costs associated with the recently settled contracts between the City of Beverly and the DPS workers and foreman unions. The terms of the contracts cover the period of fiscal year 2022 through fiscal year 2024. As such, this requested transfer will be allocated to pay some retroactive pay adjustments as well as the increased costs for the remainder of FY22. Both memorandum of agreements are being provided to you as an attachment to this correspondence. The full amount will be transferred from the Reserve for Collective Bargaining 11324/57810 to cover these costs. There are sufficient funds available within this reserve account to support this transfer. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the union representatives as well as all the employees covered within this agreement for bargaining in good faith and engaging with the negotiation team in meaningful discussion to arrive at these agreements. I know I speak for many when I say that we truly value what you bring to our community and understand the important role you play in our community's greatness. It is much appreciated. I ask that the City Council initiate action on this matter at your next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. This transfer request will require a public hearing be set and held prior to a City Council vote. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to set that public hearing for May 2nd at 8 p.m.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 112. Dear Honorable Council, as you know from our work together, the Finance Department plays a critical role in the integrity and operations of our city government. Currently comprised of 5 operational departments and 24 full-time employees, the finance team manages the procurement, collections, accounting, assessing, billing, payroll, accounts payable, information technology, budgeting, and treasury functions throughout the city. Over time, it has become clear that the demands on our finance departments are greater than the personnel resources available to support those demands. After careful consideration of operations, we recommend an additional staff member to help create capacity within the finance team and provide regular support in certain areas of our financial operations that are warranted. An assistant finance director would provide a high level of expertise that can understand and support the various activities within the department, providing leadership and project management for strategic initiatives and aiding in a variety of deliverables, which will pay dividends across all of our areas of finance. I am enclosing a draft job description that we hope to post upon your vote of support. The position would likely not be on board until late in the fiscal year, and the financial impact to FY 2022 could be absorbed within existing appropriations. With your support, we will include the fully funded position in the fiscal year 2023 budget request. The City Finance Director, Brian Ailes, and I will be more than happy to discuss this at your upcoming meeting. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ailes, I don't see Mayor Cahill at this moment. Would you like to take a moment to add anything to that?
I'd just say that we took a lot of effort to try to. Thanks, Kim. I'll just say that we took a lot of effort to try to outline what our thinking was behind the position in the correspondence that was just read, along with the job description. Myself, all of the finance managers in the department, as well as some key staff members, really got together on this and tried to figure out what the best use of a resource would be to provide additional capacity throughout our many finance departments. And this is our best effort at that. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the role and how we see it fitting into the overall operations, if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. And Mr. Perry, I'd also like to invite you to come forward. I know you sent us a memo on this, but I see Councilor Feldman, I see your hand. So why don't we go to your question first?
I don't have a question per se, but I am very excited about this, and I know it's been kind of a long-term goal for the city to be able to. My hope.
Councilor Feldman, will you yell a little bit louder?
Okay, sorry. I've never been asked to be louder before in my life. So it is very exciting that hopefully we can better express or explain the budget and the budget process to our constituents in terms of clarifying information and distilling the information that comes in those big budget books. Hopefully the resources in the absolutely overtaxed department, that the finance department, we can better serve our constituents as well with this change. And I'm really excited about that and very much in support of this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Feldman. Councilor Hausman.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, Mr. Ailes, I'm very much in support of this in principle. I do have one question, and really sort of similar to the enthusiasm that my colleague expressed. As you know, you and I have many times spoken about the ability of the city to better communicate its budget process, the budget itself, to the public. Many cities and towns have a more full display on their city websites, and to explain and to communicate that. I guess my question to you is both, in what way do you see the addition of this position, which I think your department needs, would contribute to that goal, And secondly, if this position is filled, do you as finance director commit to the goal, to achieving the goal of communicating better on the city website in particular, that our budget process and our budget displays, so that the public can understand municipal finance in a better way than is presently available on the website?
So there are a number of goals that we hope to take another step towards achieving. That is certainly one of them, not only external budget review and support and communication, but also internal. For those of you that we've worked over the years together, you know that me, for example, I might be not as quick to get back to you as you may want from time to time, because we're very taxed throughout the entire department. What we've designed this position to do is to be able to add support and capacity among all the departments, so that they then have the ability to be able to react and to be able to address some of the things that we feel we can do a better job at. Budget is certainly one of them. We also find ourselves in some departments, in some areas, being much more reactive than we ideally would want to be. And if we were able to focus our efforts on being more proactive, the long-term result is that we're more efficient with the use of our time. And so rather than looking around the room and saying which fire is the highest and that's the one you pay attention to, we're able to look around the room and say, okay, what could possibly cause a fire, and put some attentions there so that we're more efficient with the use of our time. So that's really the goal, and that's why this position, I feel, needs to have a wide variety of skill sets, not just that of a budget analyst, but someone who can understand the relationships between our accounting department, our assessing department, our collectors department, how that integrates with our IT, how they can help initiate and lead a project from start to completion. And so the budget is certainly one of them, Councillor Houseman. We've talked about this numerous times. We both agree that it's an area we need to improve on. I believe this position is going to add capacity within the finance department as a whole that will help us get that much closer to it.
So I understand adding the internal capacity and support the move to provide that, just for the reasons that you described. And I appreciate, my question was not, my question was specific, but did not intend to eliminate the other things that this position would bring. If I hear you correctly, you do think that we can do a better job in communicating to the public through our website. So I am trying to get narrow here, again, about municipal finance, including the budget, financial forecasting, and the budget process. So you agree that we can, there's room for improvement, and you agree with both that goal, but also that filling this position will help achieve that goal.
You'll see improvements in that regard for sure. What level of achievements, whether it's as robust as the team of 5 budget analysts in Salem that do the website, I can't promise that. But I can say that it is a shared desire. It's important. We need to improve on it. We will improve on it, and we'll get there eventually. It's just a matter of how quickly and to what level.
Okay, I'll leave it at that for the time being. Thank you very much. I look forward to continue this conversation as we have in the past, as we work towards that shared goal. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Houseman. Councillor St. Hilaire.
Thank you. I have several comments and a couple questions that if you could address. I guess first, Mr. Ailes, you and I started in local government in 2014 together and go back a long time. And I think I've been, I think you've done an amazing job in your role, and the city finance department has done an amazing job over the last, however long that's been, 8 years. I did talk to Mr. Perry as well about this need, and he was very adamant that this is definitely a need due to capacity. But I think, for me, and you'll understand this point of view, having worked with me in the past, adding headcount is probably, one of the last things we want to do in terms of, adding to our overall costs, in terms of adding salary, adding healthcare costs, adding long-term liability in terms of pension and OPEB. So I have a few questions, in looking at the job description. I'm a human resources professional, and strikes me that a lot of these duties listed on here are things that are currently being done. And as I said, I think you've done them well as a department. So I'm just kind of curious, related to the duties, who's doing these things now, and why is this an urgent need? Secondly, in terms of timing, we're about to discuss the budget coming up for the next fiscal year. Why is this being sent forward now and not included as part of our budget discussions? And related to that, are there other anticipated headcount needs that the administration will be bringing forward as part of the headcount? And if so, I'd love to be able to consider the full picture versus one position in a vacuum. And, I guess picking up on Councilor Feldman and Hausman's point of view, I didn't see anything in your cover letter or the job description related to, the enhancement of reporting and transparency tools. I think that's something a lot of us on the council would love to see. And in your comments, didn't really, hear a strong commitment to do that. So just kind of questioning, what is this role? Is it needed? Why is it needed now, and why is it not being part of the budget discussion?
Great questions. They're questions that I've asked myself and struggled with, for the last year plus. This isn't just out of thin air. This is some internal conversations that we've been having for some time, because we know, and it's difficult for me to sit here being a professional and a manager, sometimes I'm the worst advocate for myself, and I do know that there are areas that we are either not paying attention to when we should be. There are balls that are dropping, and we just try to make sure that they are the smallest balls that are dropping. And I don't say that lightly, but a lot of these duties, when you ask who's doing them now, they're not being done as robustly, as thoroughly, and as thoughtfully as they should be. They're important tools, and I often articulate the finance department. If the city government were a car, we're basically the engine. You don't see us. You may not hear us. We're not the public-facing part of the car all the time, but we keep it running. And when that engine light goes on and says, hey, you got a problem, you better pay attention to it. And so this is an effort to try to begin to refocus some of our resources on strategically improving our financial structure, not just within the finance department, but within individual departments throughout government that look to the finance team to support their financial operations. And just as we're putting out fires from time to time, it's difficult all the time to be able to divert attention to support the many boards, commissions, bodies that have questions, need guidance. And so this is why I'm here tonight. You asked about headcount, and I don't take it lightly. I'm usually one that's sitting here warning you about OPEB and all these things that go along with staffing increases. But I'll give you a very concrete example. In our efforts to try to be efficient and keep those other types of costs under control, within our finance department, you all approve a consulting line. And we outsource our Schedule A, we outsource our balance sheet production, and we outsource a couple other smaller reports that are done annually that are given to the Divisional Local Services. In doing so, we go to multiple accounting firms to do this work. And this past year, there was an issue that cropped up within one of the reports. And the consultant that was doing the report didn't have the cross-reference ability to some of the other reports that we had done. And so they reported what they thought was correct. DLS calls us and say, what's going on here? You're not matching your numbers. And we're scratching our heads, so we had to basically rebuild everything that the consultants did to find out what wasn't communicated properly between all these outsourced resources. if that were centralized, and you notice that's a big part of the job description here, we'd be able to coordinate that much better and be more efficient with it. Not only that, we will save some consulting money because we will be bringing in some of those aspects of that accounting department. That's just one example. I've got examples in every department that we've really thought hard about how can we make this more efficient and how do we do it with the least amount of cost to the taxpayers, because let's face it, we're all here in the interest of the taxpayers. So it's not likely that I sit here, Counselor, and I very much appreciate your comments. I think you had a question too about what we can expect to see in terms of head counts for the coming budget. We do know that there are other departments that we're looking to do some better service providing, I guess you could call it. There will be, I believe, 1, 2, maybe 3 others in total. Don't quote me on that, even though I'm on BevCam being quoted. It is a few. It is a few. So I just want you to be prepared for that. But if you would like, we can brief you on all of that in the coming weeks so that you're comfortable with what we're going to be proposing.
Councillor St. Hilaire, you have a follow-up.
Is there any, I guess, given that there will be other headcount being considered as part of the budget, what would be the impact of holding this through the budget process, which is only a couple months away?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of how quickly we can begin to dig out, I guess you could say. And I do know that in FY22, we have the capacity within the existing budgets to bring this person on. I don't think it's going to be a quick hire. I think there's a very specific skill set we're looking for. Someone that has supervision experience, someone that can project manage, someone that has accounting and finance experience, budget experience. Those are all benefits to the position that we'd be looking for. So I think it's going to be a very wide net we need to cast, and it's going to be probably months before we get someone on board. And then there's also the learning process. With a position like this, it'll take 3 to 6 months, I would assume, before they're really up to speed and running under their own steam.
All set, Councillor St. Hilaire. Thank you. Councillor Rand.
Oh, thank you. I have a quick question. I would love to see the specific line items that would be available to absorb the financial commitment in this fiscal year. If you already know them, great. If not.
Yeah, they would all be within the finance department because we wouldn't need an interdepartmental transfer. So very likely there would be, depending upon when we bring them on, a couple $1,000s in the IT budget will be able to be shaved out of probably EDP services. And then most likely in total, we'd probably need, maybe $6 or $7 grand in total out of all the finance department budgets are about, probably about $2 million. So we'll be able to cobble together. We've also had some turnover savings in some positions that we could pull from as well.
Okay, thank you. And actually, you answered my second question, which was what's the total amount that you would anticipate for this fiscal year? So that's...
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate this being a position that is in the 6-figure range. And so you figure with that, it might be a $2,000 a week job. So for a month, maybe $8,000.
I'm in the wrong profession. I won't tell you how long it takes to earn that as an aide at a school. Just to throw some perspective out there. But thank you for answering those questions. And I do see, I'd love to just hear more about how you see your time being freed up. Because I think you're focusing in on a lot of these kind of smaller, not smaller, but other kind of like detail-oriented projects. And I imagine that leaves you not able to proceed with certain projects. So I'm curious about that.
So let's remember, too, that there's 24, 25 people in the finance department. And one of my biggest roles that I need to focus more on is managing. I need to make sure my managers are being efficient and their staff are being efficient and that they're focusing on things that are in alignment with the overall strategic vision of the finance department and of the city. And when you're paying attention to projects all the time, sometimes that is what gets pushed to the side. And so there are many initiatives, and if my managers were here, they would tell you, when I first started 8 or 9 years ago, we would do annual retreats and talk about how can we do things better? How can we make things more efficient? Let's lay out the long-term goals. Let's lay out the business plan to get to those goals and really kind of step towards those goals year after year. We haven't had a chance to do that in some time, but we need to get back to it because there's improvements to be made everywhere. And we're not going to get there without additional capacity within the managers that know their business best.
It's my sense that this is not a conversation we're going to wrap up in the next 8 minutes, given that I see Councillor Bowen's hand and Councillor Houseman's waiting to speak. And I am mindful of the remainder of this agenda and the time constraint of the lights going on in the middle school. So I guess my question is, councillors, does it feel like more discussion is warranted than we can have tonight? And if that is the case, it would be my inclination to refer this to Finance and Property for that conversation. Councillor Houseman, you were first, and then Councillor Bowen. But
I more or less have a yes or no question, which I think Mr. Ailes can answer very quickly without taking too much time. Mr. Ailes, earlier in the month, I addressed a letter on behalf of the council to invite you and Mayor Cahill to meet with the council on April 28th to discuss budget priorities of the council. We haven't had occasion to speak or exchange. Are you and the mayor intending to meet with the council on that evening?
Absolutely. Yep, it's already on our schedule.
Hello, I didn't realize you were here. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Houseman. Councillor Bowen.
So I would be happy to hold questions and have a little bit further discussion in Finance and Property if that's the sense of others.
Mr. Perry, before we do that or not, would you like to come and say anything about this position?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everybody. I want to be very brief. I know I promised inside 7 minutes. I wrote to you over the weekend my position on the request of the mayor for an assistant finance director. I strongly support it. I am a very strong supporter of it, and I enjoyed Councilor Feldman's commentary because she's in finance business and she gets this a little bit. I've been with you for 5.5 years, and one of my observations, one of the things I do is I go in that building quite a bit, and I walk around, and I call it management by walking around. It's an old trick to just see what's going on, get a feel for things, what's happening in the building, what are they doing, and one of the things I've absolutely observed in the last couple of years is the lack of resources in the finance department. It's an area that's hard to support and get a lot, people are not going to come out for bean counters. But the reality is that, in my professional opinion, it's woefully inadequate. Quite frankly, I've been, and excuse the language, beating up Mr. Ailes for the last 2 years, telling him, in my view, that this was more than necessary. I think I pushed it harder than he did, and he was a little reluctant because he wants to put an S on his chest and do everything. And it's my view that this is absolutely necessary. As I articulated in my memo to you all, just in the time I've been here, this budget has grown by $30 million. It's a lot of money. He articulated the issues of both free cash and Schedule A. That's outsourced. We could save a few bucks there. It would be much better done in-house. I've heard consistently from, I can't tell you how many people through former Chair Houseman's Committee on Finance, on forecasting, thank you, how we don't do certain things, and I'm hoping that could be addressed as well. Bottom line to it, I really believe this is necessary. I strongly support it. I disagree with the finance director. There's been some discussion of maybe coming up with money this fiscal year, knowing the business, knowing what's out there, and knowing who's available. My instincts are pretty comfortable that you're not going to appoint this position until after July 1, given what's out there. And as such, I really don't see any exposure to FY22. I'd be very surprised. But I have reviewed, I gave you a third quarter budget to actual report. There is capacity. If you do hire someone this year, to come up some funds in the accountant's department. So bottom line, too, I can go on and on with this. A lot of this has been pushed by me, quite frankly, in my role as your budget analyst. We are woefully inadequate as far as the resources and finances here, and I strongly recommend you support the request of the mayor. And Madam President, I got 4 minutes. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have in 4 minutes, if necessary.
Well, I want to come back to Councillor Bowen. I don't know, Councillor Bowen, do you have a question that you'd like to ask at this point?
My question is around supervision and a couple other kind of finer points. I also agree this capacity is needed, and so it's more sort of having some broader discussion about how the finance department achieves some of the goals that were mentioned. So I don't know that we have time for that sort of whole discussion here, or that this is necessarily even the best spot for it.
If you come back to finance and property for the discussion.
Thank you. That's my inclination. If there are councillors who would like to have some of that bar discussion, and I hear that that's not necessarily saying that there's not a sense that this is necessary, but that there's wanting to understand better some of the pieces. So, Ms. Dixon, let's refer that to finance and property. Councillor Houseman, if you would be willing to help the subcommittee get that discussion rolling, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Ailes, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for your time and for your memo. Mr. Mayor. No, you have 3 minutes. You may.
You've already acted, right?
Okay. Okay, thank you. I know we're coming very close to the time of the public hearing. Ms. Dixon, I would like to, if we could, get Dr. Chirocek, her order in. That's communications from other city officers and boards. It's order 119. And Dr. Chirocek, if you'd like to, oh, you're already there. Look at that.
This is permission, or number 119, permission to enter into a lease purchase transaction with Apple for student laptops.
Thank you. And Dr. Chirocek, I know you have a time constraint. So if you would like to say anything about this, if it does come to 8 o'clock, I'm going to interrupt you just ever so briefly, open the hearing and recess it just slightly. So that I'd like to be able to get Dr. Chirocek in before her time constraint as well.
Yeah, so I'm before you requesting approval for, because we're required if we enter into a lease that's greater than 3 years to come to city council and get it approved. So this is the same lease that we get annually for the freshman laptop lease program. We purchase the laptops and lease them out, and we are entering into 4-year leases. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Houseman.
Yeah, I mean, this lease is a renewal of this lease, or re-signing of this lease is an annual event that the council engages in. It's a fundamental part of the one-to-one laptop program for the high school, and it started at high school, and now it's even more broadly. But this is almost considered, from my point of view, routine business, but very fundamentally important business to support the school program. So I would encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Did you want to make a motion to that effect,
I would
Councillor
make a
Houseman?
motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Chirocek. Right on time. Those educators, they're always right on the schedule, right before the school bell. So this is perfect timing to open our 8 p.m. continued public hearing on order number 65, National Grid New England Power Company petition for transmission line franchise. This is continued from our 3-1 and 4-4 meeting. Yeah. Sorry, Ms. Dixon, would you read that order, please?
So, let's see. Order that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, April 4 at 8 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to the petition of New England Power Company for an electric transmission line franchise, aka grant of location, in accordance with GL Chapter 166, Section 21 through 22. This was published Friday, March 25th, 2022.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. Oh, thank you. And I want to mention and thank you to the counselors to my left who have sharp eyes. to acknowledge that Representative Jerry Paracella and our State Senator Joan Lovely have joined us remotely. They are on the screen with us. So I know that we just opened this public hearing. I see many members of the public as well as some of the our own city consultant from Tetra Tech, as well as members from National Grid here. I know this room is not our usual, so I would like to entertain a motion just to recess this to 8:06. That's 5 minutes, just so we can sort of get more chairs as we need, get members of the public to be able to sign up to speak if they would like. So, councilors, I'd entertain a motion to recess this hearing to 8:06.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. We'll recess this hearing. Also, I'd take a motion for a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're take a 5-minute recess. Get everybody situated in the room. Members of the public, there is a sign-up sheet that Ms. Dixon will have. If you would like to sign up, you may. If you are joining us remotely, you can type your name and address in the chat to be able to sign up to speak. Thank you. And we're back, local government fans. So thank you. I know there are a lot of people in the room now. Thank you for being here. I know this is unusual for us, the city council, to be meeting here at the middle school. One of the reasons that we wanted to do this meeting here was to make sure that we could also have remote access for this meeting, specifically for both our public hearings tonight. We had an earlier public hearing on the report from the Charter Review Committee about the city charter, and then we have this continued hearing on National Grid Order number 65. And so it was important to us to be able to have a meeting where folks for whom it's difficult to come to an evening meeting for any number of reasons would be able to also join us online. So thank you to everyone who is here. Thank you to those who are online. One note, I will repeat a few of these things a few times throughout, so you may get tired of having me say these. Oh, I'll reopen the public hearing on Order 65. Thank you, Ms. Dixon. I could read her thoughts. The microphones that we're using tonight, including the one at the speaker's podium here, are for BevCam's purposes, but do not amplify. Thank you, Kim, over there in the booth for BevCam. They do not amplify the speaker's voices in the room. And so I just want to invite all of us, whether you are a member of the public speaking, whether you are one of the people who are here. Oh, they can't hear online. Sorry, Kim's on it. We apologize. 1 second. The closed captioning is coming back. Are we good now?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kim, for that. So what I was saying is the microphones do not project the speaker's voices. They do now work very well for BevCam. So those of us who are speaking, whether a member of the public or someone who's here as either our consultant from the city or from National Grid, please do your best. I know we all have differing decibels of voices. Please do your best to project as much as possible so that everyone can hear you. Just channel your best preacher and just shout it out. Thank you, Ms. Dixon. These microphones also are off until you want them on. So when you come up to speak, make sure that if the microphone is red around the bottom, which this one is right now, for example, if you could press the push button, that will turn it green, and then you'll be ready to speak. Especially for my fellow counselors, when you're not speaking, if we could remember to turn them off, that will minimize cross noise, which will be helpful, especially for those joining us on BevCam and remotely. And most importantly, I think for the purposes of this hearing, I do want to just say, and I will say this a few times throughout, if you're a member of the public and you are interested in speaking, there is a hard copy sign-up sheet here in person next to Counselor Crowley, and you can come up at any point and add your name to that sign-up sheet so that we can call you forward to participate. If you are joining us remotely on the Google Meet and you would like to participate, and some folks have already done this, you can type your name and address for the record into the chat function, and that will allow Ms. Dixon and I to be able to monitor the chat and make sure that we're calling on people in order. And I would ask that unless there's a technical issue, if you could reserve the chat only for signing up to speak, that will help us be able to make sure we don't miss anyone and work through the list appropriately. I think I got all of the logistical pieces. I do want to just take a moment, and this is now a large room with many people, and I fear I may miss some of you, but I do want to acknowledge Mayor Cahill is here with us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here. Our Commissioner of Public Services, Commissioner Mike Collins, is here with us. Thank you for being here. Mayor's Constituent Services Director, Ronnie Jacobson, is here with us. Our Assistant City Solicitor, Beth Oldmixon, is here with us in person, and Assistant City Solicitor Jesse Dole is here with us remotely. Thank you all for being here with us. Mr. Ray Miaris, who is the outside counsel that's been obtained for the City Council in this matter, is here with us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Miaris, for being here. And am I missing other city staff? Oh, Solicitor Williams has joined us remotely as well. Thank you very much, Solicitor. Thank you. And for those who just joined us, I will just note that Counselor Sweeney is not with us tonight. He will be able to watch this footage later and be able to get caught up. He's on his honeymoon, so we wish him well and offer him our best wishes as he travels. And I do want to acknowledge again our Representative Jerry Paracella and State Senator Joan Lovely are joining us remotely as well. Thank you. So I think we've been continuing this hearing, this public hearing, in the interest of being able to make sure that counselors and members of the public are able to hear from many experts and to ask as many questions as possible and as needed. And so we continued this hearing to this evening to be able to take more public comment, but also to be able to hear from the city's constructability consultant. So Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you'd like to come up and introduce the consultants, and we'll start with them, and then we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Madam President, councilors, good to see you all. It's good to see so many people here. I want to to acknowledge that there's so many residents here tonight, both neighbors, immediate abutters, and other residents from around the city who have shared concerns about both the process that was undergone and the preferred route that was put before the siting board and approved. And so one of the things that we agreed to do in conversation with the resident group was to hire a consultant, paid with city funds, to give us an objective review of the constructability review that National Grid had commissioned. And that is a look at constructability of the line within the right-of-way of the MBTA, essentially up the train line. And so the city brought on Tetra Tech, and Bob Parsons of Tetra Tech is here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to him. Bob can tell you a little bit about who Tetra Tech is, the scope of work they've done, and what they've found. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Parsons, for being here with us. And one other just logistical matter I should have mentioned, and this will become more important when we get to the public comment and also questions from counselors. If you would, anyone in the room, direct any questions, especially if there's follow-up questions for a speaker, through me. And that will help me to be able to make sure that it's repeated for BevCam to hear, and also to make sure that we keep information flowing and don't have too much crosstalk, which can get really difficult when it's a big room for people to follow. Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you, Madam President. And council members, Mr. Mayor, and the public for attending tonight's meeting. My name is Bob Parsons. I'm a senior project manager at Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is a large multidisciplinary engineering consulting firm, approximately 22,000 employees internationally. Although I'm here tonight, there were a team of folks that did help with this review. Can you raise your voice? Sure. Well, maybe I'll pull it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think Mike had mentioned that.
Just yell and don't feel bad that you're yelling at us.
Sorry. Okay. I was one part of a team that did this review. We had an electrical engineer look at it. We had a construction engineer look at it. We also had a railroad design engineer look at it. So I think we had a pretty good representation of folks on this project. As Mr. Merritt indicated, the city hired Tetra Tech on behalf of the city to do a peer review specifically of a memorandum that was prepared by electrical consulting engineers that evaluated the constructability of replacing the existing N192 115 kV electric transmission main within the existing railroad right-of-way. As we understand it, there are issues with the existing transmission main, and it needs to be replaced, but it cannot be replaced in the same alignment that it currently exists. Sure. So, as part of this review, the primary source of information was the existing memorandum that was prepared. I believe it was prepared for National Grid. But we also did a fair amount of data collection, specifically with guidance and requirements and regulations that would help drive this particular review, certainly, and give us a better understanding as to what the conditions are and how we could possibly work within the conditions and the regulatory constraints that exist. Some of the documentation we did obtain, and I'm somewhat familiar with based on past projects, is the Railroad Operations Directorate, which does provide a lot of guidance for working within a railroad right-of-way. In my experience, I've worked primarily in perpendicular crossings with rails. In this particular case, it's along parallel run, adjacent to the rails. Within this corridor, it is fairly congested. There's an overhead 115 kV transmission main. There's the existing N192, which is 115 kV, and an existing 23 kV electric transmission as well, along with two rails. So it's congested. What we tried to do, along with the director, was also establish constraints, limitations within the railroad right-of-way that a new conduit could potentially be located. OSHA requirements, along with National Grid documentation, help drive some of that. So I'm looking at a memo here, and I apologize, I don't have anything to present up, but I think the memo was provided, and I think people, okay, it's on the website, and I think people have had a chance generally to review it. And so I apologize for not being able to visibly show things, but what we tried to do graphically within the memo was lay out typical cross-sections of the rails as prepared by ECE, or Environmental Consulting Engineers, who did the original review and assessment. Use those to establish, well, if we take all of these requirements and limitations, where could we possibly build a new electric transmission main or construct it? And quite honestly, it is extremely challenging and difficult. Given the fact that there are 2 rails, active rails within this corridor, and the 3 existing electric transmission mains, along with some other crossings, drainage, and I believe the city has a sewer main, I think that is at least in one section of this alignment, it becomes very, very difficult without seeking some sort of a variance or basically a variance from one, or if not many, requirements that are currently in place. When we walk through this process, there are numerous considerations to be had here. And you can't see it, but it's impressive. And again, if you do have access to it, I suggest you take a look at it. But there are a lot of limitations. Basically, it would imply that you cannot work within the railroad right-of-way to construct this new conduit, especially given the fact that the existing N192 needs to maintain and stay in place until a new conduit is constructed, whether here or anywhere else. So that was a challenge. OSHA has also established criteria in working near transmission mains, primarily for safety. So working within this alignment would certainly have to consider not only railroad requirements, but also safety requirements established by OSHA. Again, these are transmission mains that have high voltage, and they could become very dangerous if not managed properly. So we went through that process. We also had some documentation from National Grid just based on, I think, criteria that they like to see if you're working in and around their transmission mains. So again, when you look at this holistically, it becomes very much a challenge to install a new 115 kV transmission main within the corridor. There are other features that exist within the right-of-way. There's presence of ledge or rock, bedrock. So if you were to try to construct this new transmission main within this corridor, you would potentially have to deal with ledge. Ledge removal typically is managed by blasting, hoe ramming, which is a mechanical way of chipping away rock. You can use chemical splitting, but they're all pretty invasive and slow down construction considerably. When we did, again, look at the cross-section, let me take one step back. The 2 buried conduits within this alignment as well are fluctuous, meaning that they seem to move within a corridor, but they're moving. So it's really hard to look at a plan and say, okay, we know exactly where this is based on the information we have. We could depict or establish an alignment for this new conduit and try to maintain separation between certain key critical infrastructure. So it further complicates. So you have ledge, you have a narrow right-of-way, you have numerous other utilities within this corridor. Again, making it very difficult. As part of the process, we did reach out to MBTA to understand a couple of different things. One is, do they have, typically when I've worked on projects, not necessarily exactly like this for sure, but a pre-application meeting would be called, and you would meet with certain regulatory agencies and establish, initial ground rules for certain projects, get initial feedback. I think with the MBTA and specifically their real estate arm, which is a third party, I think, at least on that initial contact, not something they would jump into and not something that would be something they would offer. Perhaps it could be at different levels, but wasn't necessarily anything that we could kind of jump into and start talking about it. There are other things, again, within this right-of-way that make it a challenge. There are environmental resource areas, other utilities. When considering excavating within this, provided, let's say you could find an alignment to avoid rails and the existing electric undergrounds, there's the large overheads. For one of the OSHA requirements or guidelines here is to say that you can't dig within 50 feet of those large, I'm sure you know the large poles that are holding the electric conduits. They say that, and they do that likely because they don't want to necessarily try to undermine or even consider undermining some of those large poles. So again, all of these things are really making it a challenge, very, very difficult to do any of this or put this new conduit in this right-of-way without considering a couple of things. One would be taking the rails out of service, because there may be a situation where the only place this conduit could go is below the rails, and that would be certainly a challenge and a problem for MBTA. So that's something to consider. Thank you. Not used to talking so much all at once here. That's a consideration to be had here. And again, these are all constructability issues that we've tried to sort of identify and present a full picture so that we all were kind of familiar and aware with what would be challenged with. The other potential issue is you may have to de-energize some of the existing, specifically the overhead electric, to work safely within this corridor. And that, again, is a service interruption for the electrical side of things. Things that are likely not easily granted, if at all, because I quite honestly don't know what a lot of this infrastructure does feed and the implications, not only in Beverly, but beyond in terms of electrical service. So again, just another more challenges. It's a very, I can say that I've worked in public right-of-way and I've worked in crossings rail right-of-way, and a railroad right-of-way, especially this one, is very congested, and it's congested with significant infrastructure. So it makes the constructability factor very, very important and critical here. The other portion of that is a constructability issue, but more based on schedule, is the MBTA is currently undertaken a PTC, positive train control project that is ongoing. And it was established within the ECE memorandum, and I confirmed with a follow-up call to the MBTA is that no new projects would be allowed within the right-of-way until that was completed. The best they could offer at the time was that the PTC project would be completed by 2025, perhaps sooner, but no guarantees there. The other concurrent project is a fiber resiliency project that I think was recently bid, but is still somewhere on the MBTA's radar for implementation. And that would be sometime after the PTC project, as far as I was told. And I don't know what the schedule of something like that would look like. So, although not necessarily a specific construction issue, it is certainly an access issue. The other, speaking of access, the other potential issue is points of access. It's very difficult to get to some of these locations, and you'd have to create essentially a road or an access road to get to it. And you'd have to consider all of that, especially in a fairly narrow right-of-way, to get to specific locations, dig locations, whether you were open cutting the entire run or you were trying to implement other means of construction, such as trenchless. You'd have to consider all these. This project, even if it could be done in a trenchless fashion, would have to consider large vaults that would be required as part of a new N192 transmission main. I'll say this, there's a lot of other data that could be obtained here. In order to consider open cut or any excavation within the right-of-way, I think you need to obtain a lot of additional subsurface data. meaning underlying soil conditions, locations of rock. We see outcrops there, so you'd really want to identify where those are and understand what you'd be dealing with as you go through, and rock being one of the larger ones, one of the larger considerations. To that end, I think, it's difficult to say it's impossible to do. It certainly has significant challenges, and in the end, and it's written in the memo, not quite sure it would even be allowed. It's a narrow right-of-way with a lot of infrastructure that is there. At one point in one of our discussions, and this is the second meeting I've attended, the first one was with a smaller group and the mayor, and we walked through some initial concerns. The mayor had asked us to sort of evaluate and consider, because it's easy to sit here and say, well, there's all these constructability issues, there's no way we can do this. And the mayor challenged us to say, what would we have to do to realize something like this within the right-of-way? And quite honestly, I think the construction of something like this is important, certainly, and has its challenges, but it would have to be planned out and engineered in such a fashion that is extremely diligent and thoughtful before you could even establish or even try to put forward a project like this, which, as an engineer, I have, there's some serious constructability issues here. There's not, quite honestly, the memo that we did review from ECEC was helpful. I think we tried to take it a little bit farther and to say, okay, well, we understand that these things here, how could we possibly make this work? So when you start to peel back the onion a little bit and say, this is the railroad operations director, what does it present to us and how would we need to navigate around it? There's OSHA requirements. How do we deal with those, if at all? And again, as you start pulling all these pieces together, it becomes very, very difficult to do. I'll say that if it were to be considered moving forward, there would have to be a lot more data collected, certainly. Again, I mentioned the soil conditions, the locations of bedrock, understanding a lot more about the existing infrastructure there, before you could even possibly, understanding exactly where every utility and every conduit and all these pipes that perhaps are crossing at different locations, resource areas, drainage. If it were me, I'd want to know exactly where everything was so that you could even start to look at whether this is a viable thing or a feasible thing. I can say it's very difficult based on what we've seen so far. Typically as part of a project or most projects that I've worked on, there's a bit of an alternatives analysis. So I would imagine that authorities that would grant permission for such a project would need to be comfortable that there is no other alternative to doing such a thing. And that is consistent for every project, more or less, that I've worked on. You always consider what your alternatives are. And I think to some degree that's been done, but quite honestly, our focus was really on the ECE memo, what it provided, and providing our thoughts independent of anything. We're not partial to any location for this conduit, quite honestly, and we looked at it from a very, very third-party perspective. I understand it has impacts regardless of where it goes, but what we tried to do was truly establish, establish to the best of our abilities, if this was a sort of a feasible approach or a feasible option. In the end, we tended to agree with the conclusion of the ECE memorandum. And I think we got there by digging in deeper with other pieces of data and guidance documentation that exists. And again, the mayor had challenged us to what would we need to do to make something like this work? And we've established some steps here that, perhaps would be our, maybe recommendations, but I don't know, again, given what we've seen, generally speaking, and the railroad folks, MBTA, I've worked with them in the past, they're very concerned about working adjacent to or below their rails. It's a very dangerous proposition, certainly, and when we've done it, it's been with great care, and it's been through or trenchless excavations or trenchless work. and it's been very carefully administered with monitoring and assurances to the degree that we could that was going to be safe long-term. So we did try to establish what we thought might be some steps. And quite honestly, the first step would be to meet with the MBTA, National Grid, and other stakeholders to talk about the project. And I'm assuming a lot of this perhaps did happen or didn't happen, but looking at it independently, I felt that our team felt that would be the first step into establishing, hey, this is what we're trying to do. What do we have to consider, and start the discussions at that point. And then sort of move through the process, because I truly don't know what the impacts are to trying to fit a new conduit in this corridor. And in the end, given where everything does exist very specifically throughout the entire stretch, it's almost a mile, it very well could be impossible to do. It's just very difficult to say, based on the data that we had, that it was not going to be allowed. But I can say that based on what we have seen, it would be very difficult to do without, at least, if you could get approval, major railroad interruptions, perhaps taking some rails out of service for a period of time, as well as potentially de-energizing very important electrical infrastructure, which are big deals. I mean, that would be a big deal. They have greater impacts. So I apologize for blabbering here for however long it was, but it was an very interesting process for us, certainly. And again, we tried to be as third-party independent, not going in with any preconceived notions about where something should go or should not go, but certainly take a look at what some of the constraints are, both physical, regulatory, and provide an opinion based on that. So I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. And I would like to make sure that we leave, as we've been doing, the majority of our time tonight for public comment, because I think there will be time for the council to continue to have conversation during the conclusion of this hearing. Public comment portion has been the front portion of these first series of hearings. However, before Mr. Parsons steps away, although I trust you'll be with us in the room in any case, but councilors, are there any questions for Mr. Parsons at this time? Councilor St. Hilaire.
Yes, I just want to be clear. I'm hearing you describe
Microphone.
I'm hearing you describe the challenges and difficulties. Is it your professional opinion that this is not a viable option?
Without significant interruptions, yes. I think, yeah. This is a very, very challenging corridor to work in, and it provides constructability constraints that I haven't seen before on a project. Again, it's not been something similar, but this is a very, very challenging project to take on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor St. Hilaire. And I do, before I go to Councilor Hausman, you had referenced that you had your memo, and the mayor reminded us all that it's on the website. I just want to reiterate for members of the public who may wish to see the memo that Mr. Parsons is referencing and talking about, that along with any other documents that have been received, even footage of other meetings previous in this process, can be found on the city website, beverlyma.gov. And Ms. Jacobson, the mayor's constituent services director, has made it so that right on the main page there's a banner to this issue, and you can go to that page, and it's become sort of a landing place for all of these different pieces of documentation. So if members of the public want to be able to see this memo, you can find that there. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Councilor Hausman.
Yes, Mr. Parsons, thank you for being here this evening. My question has to do with really the scope of your review. Your scope had to do with the feasibility, if I understand it, of using the railroad track route as a way of connecting points A and points B. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Your scope did not include whether there were other ways other than going through the Beverly streets or the railroad track to achieve getting electrical service from point A to point B. Is that correct?
Yeah, our focus of our scope was, quite honestly, reviewing the ECE memorandum, which did include or consider the full electric transmission within the railroad right away.
Right.
Yeah.
So if there were other ways to connect points A and points B, that would have been outside of the scope of your review?
Yeah, we did not look at alternative, some in, some out approaches to that. We did not do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Houseman. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. So one of the questions that I've heard from a number of neighbors is about sort of the comparison of the constructability in our streets as well. And so I'm just curious, and this may also be a question that Commissioner Collins might have more color on as well. But the things you mentioned about, level of disruption that it would take to do this kind of work, and the level of detail that you would want to see in a proposal in terms of soil conditions, ledge, underground infrastructure that's already there. Do you feel like we have that for the streets? And in terms of comparability, I think a lot of the neighbors are feeling like the degree of disruption that seems impossible to fathom along the MBTA line is the same degree of disruption we might experience in front of our homes. So if you could just comment on that.
Yeah, so again, the focus of our study was to evaluate impacts within the right-of-way. I know that there has been an alternative alignment that includes the installation within public rights-of-way. I think from a constructability perspective, working within the railroad right-of-way, specifically this one, poses challenge that public right-of-way construction does not. Now, with that, public right-of-way construction also poses challenges that need to be managed. And I don't know what type of data collection, quite honestly, was collected as part of the alternate route. Sorry, so this goes here or nowhere? This goes nowhere, okay, all right, okay, all right.
That goes online.
That goes over there, okay, okay.
If you face that way, I can.
Okay, so, all right, so the focus certainly of our study was to evaluate within the railroad right-of-way. We are aware that there was an alternative or alignment that did convey this transmission main through city streets. Constructability concerns within this railroad right-of-way are very challenging, and that's not to say that construction within public right-of-way is not also complicated. The railroad right-of-way constructability reviews are unique, and unique to public right-of-way construction. I don't know exactly what the specific challenges are for the public right-of-way construction. I haven't looked at that design. And I don't know what data has been collected as part of it. I do know that, I think there wasn't a detailed design put forward for work within the right-of-way, likely because of the constructability issues, perhaps. I assume that surveys and other means of data collection for the public right-of-way work was completed, borings, geotechnical investigations, those types of investigations, which you would typically do for a subsurface pipeline utility project. So I think it's just different. I would assume that the data collection was completed for the public right-of-way work. I'll also say the constructability concerns are very likely unique to the railroad right-of-way, where you do have active rails. It's more regulated in many, many ways, along with 3 fairly sizable electric transmission mains. Generally when I'll work on a project, you want to identify those things that are going to be problematic and try to design around those things if you possibly can. Ledge removal is disruptive, regardless of how you do it. Working near rails or in rails is a challenge. It's difficult to do. There's a lot of things that you try to establish a very accurate existing condition before moving forward. So I hope I answered the question. I don't. Okay. So perhaps all that data was collected for the public right-of-way piece of it or the current design. I'm not completely aware of it, but again, our focus was what was offered as part of this review. And I don't believe there was any, at least it wasn't made available to me, subsurface investigation, things like that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, thank you. And it answers the question about sort of what the differences are. And so
Okay.
maybe we'll have a chance to hear from Public Services or from the National Grid team after public comment about the sort of how to think about the less unique challenges
Sure.
in the public way.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillors, any further questions at this point for Mr. Parsons? Again, recognizing that we'll be able to ask him further questions as we go as well. All right, thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time,
Thank you.
and we may have you back up here.
Okay, I'll be here.
Before we move to the public comment portion, Commissioner Collins, I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to say at this point. It's okay if not. I just wanted to make sure to. No, I'd love to hear from the public. Okay. Members of the National Grid team, was there anything that you had come? There were a few questions I think outstanding at the end of the last hearing. I don't know if you want to take a few moments now to speak or later in the evening.
I'll just mention to that, the question that was asked was about load forecasting, and we provided a written response to that, so we didn't have anything further to add on that piece. I wasn't aware of any other outstanding questions that were asked of us.
No,
Am
I
I
think that was the answer to that question. But I also was not sure if you had anything. I know Ms. Haskell had asked if members of your team.
Yeah, and I can do it now or after the public comment.
I think
So-
it'd be helpful now, only because then if the public, it may spark something that they want to ask
Sure.
or respond to.
And the first thing I wanted to do, and it relates to Councilmember Bowen's question, and there have been other comments during the proceeding about our Salem Cable project, which was not that long ago, a very similar type of project, underground through city streets. And some of those comments were negative, which was kind of surprising to us, because at the time, the feedback that we received was actually quite positive from both municipal officials and the community. And so we found an article from March 7, 2016 in the Salem News, and I have copies that I'll provide. But I just want to take a minute so that, the folks here and folks online can hear what was written about that at the end. The title is Salem Cable Project Nears Final Phase, so it's near the tail end of the project. And they quote Rhinus Oosthoek, who's the executive director of the Salem Chamber of Commerce, who says they've done a really good job doing the project the way they said they would, communicating with the rest of the business community and staying on track with everything. Ward 1 Councilor Robert McCarthy said that there has been frustration from residents along the way, but the company has been, quote, doing what they're supposed to be doing, trying to keep it on schedule. It's all about communication, he said. They're very good about it, coordinating as they're ripping out anywhere from 50 to 100 feet a day, letting residents know where they're going to be, what streets will be impacted, what streets may be rerouted. Along the way, Oosthoek noted, the project didn't trigger the closure of a single business. He's quoted as saying, how often were there street closings, traffic jams? How often did they mismanage areas where people couldn't get into a store or their driveway? The answer is never, Oosthoek said. They've done a good job informing the community, listening to the concerns of the community, and addressing them as soon as possible. Our commitment is to try and get the same article written about this project. We know what we're doing, we do a good job, we really try our hardest to listen to the community and, reduce impacts and try and make it work. We understand it's disruptive, but, we do a good job. The other comment was kind of just some context for the decision that you're facing with this petition from a public utility. And as you probably know, and as council's probably advised you, you sit as a quasi-judicial body when you're reviewing this petition. The Supreme Judicial Court has explained it in the following way. The power is vested in selectmen and boards of aldermen, not as representatives of the cities and towns, but as independent boards of public officers who act in judicial or quasi-judicial capacity respecting the subject matter being a grant allocation petition. So that means you hold hearings, you weigh evidence, you ascertain facts, and you make conclusions based on those facts. It's probably a little different from what you're used to. You're not sitting as policymakers or legislators, and you're not sitting as some sort of appellate body that is second-guessing the siting board with regard to route selection or other issues that they've made determinations on. So in the realm of facts, we've heard from experts, your own expert, our expert. Magnetic fields are everywhere. They're created whenever electricity flows. They're around us right now. The EMFs that's going to be created by the cable are no different from what's created in what you're exposed to with your computers and these lights and the TV, et cetera. There are guidelines established by national and international health organizations. One of the most common ones is ICNIRP, the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. They've established a level that's intended to be protective of human health at 2,000 milligauss. If you read our exponent's report, this cable will produce a tiny fraction of that amount. Okay, so that's the facts basically on EMF that you've heard. The MBTA right-of-way we just heard, it's extremely congested. The MBTA is undergoing projects currently and over the next several years that are just going to make it more congested. So even if, the right-of-way was feasible, what that means is since the company and the MBTA can't work at the same time, if nothing else, it means this project's going to be delayed for several years, which can't happen. Lastly, on the MBTA issue, and this is sort of, again, touches on something that's come up, and it hasn't been talked about at all because I don't think any of those abutters have been present and had a voice in this proceeding, and it's too bad because they would be hit twice by not only the installation, again, this is assuming the project was even feasible in the right-of-way, which it's not. They would be hit by the installation of the project and then a follow-on removal of the existing cable. So they would be facing massive impacts for an extended period of time. Those impacts would at a minimum include the temporary loss of some properties because as we heard, you'd need to create an access roadway right along the MBTA rail. Very likely cause permanent loss of screening. They would, again, as we just heard, the construction period would be much longer. And during that extended construction period, the construction under the directorate would be limited between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Okay? It's not. It's bullshit, okay? So even if that's waivable by the MBTA, okay, you're saddling them with two projects, and that again is assuming that it's even feasible there. There's a project that needs to be built. We have a compromised transmission cable that serves over 40,000 residents in Beverly and in the Cape Ann region. Among that number are hospitals and what we call critical care customers for whom reliable service is literally a matter of life and death. The siting board has determined that the need for the project is acute and it can't be delayed. Those are the facts. The siting board has made determinations on the two issues that you've been grappling with, EMF and the MBTA right-of-way. So even if those were fair game for you to second guess and to substitute your judgment for, which I don't believe is the case as a legal matter, the facts that have been presented to you point in only one direction, and that's to approve this petition. Respectfully, the opinions of a portion of the citizens are not facts. They don't weigh against the expert opinions you've heard on both of those issues. And it's not something that, as a quasi-judicial body, you can consider when either approving or what people are calling for delaying or denying the project. So we would respectfully ask that you move as quickly as possible toward a decision on the petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Mr. Miaris, I don't know if you would be willing just to take a few minutes just to help us understand or respond at all about what the council is or is not, Mr. Riley's opinion about what is the council's purview.
Sure, I'll give it a try.
Sure, I'll give it a try. The basic idea that Mr. Riley presented, when he presented it positively, is more or less what I have told you, which is to say, you are... My goodness. This is already about double my usual
Mr.
voice.
Miaris, I think if you can project towards the audience and
Project this way. Okay. So, what I have already told the council previously, in a positive fashion, reflects the same thing that Mr. Riley said. They're here to consider the evidence that is presented, to make findings of fact, and to make a decision about whether the public's use of its of the public way is being incommoded. And I'm sorry that that's a terrible legal word, but if you think of it as being inconvenienced, that's close enough for this kind of work. They need to make a finding ultimately, and they're entitled to attach conditions so that the public will not be incommoded. Without getting too technical about quasi-judicial decision-making, they are sort of like a court. They take in evidence and they make a decision based on the evidence. Where Mr. Riley and I might disagree is that your councilors also know your city and have policy positions about almost everything, and it's not realistic to expect them to ignore the practical implications and the policy implications of the decision that they make. So those things are going to color the way that they look at the evidence and the way they fashion their conditions. All of that, I think, is perfectly appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Miaris. I appreciate that clarification. At this point, I would like to go to public comment because we have, as I said, been trying to use the bulk of these initial series of hearings for public comment. And tonight we are under sort of a unique constraint with timing because the middle school is built so that the lights go out automatically at 10. That's an energy saving feature. But members of the public, you may find that useful anyway because you all have things that you may need to get up and do in the morning. So I would like to devote till about 9:30 for public comment. If there's not as much public comment to fill it, then we can resume questions from counselors. At that point, we will recess this public hearing again to our May 16th meeting, pending approval by the council, but my intention is to recess it to 8 p.m. to keep the timing consistent. And we will take further public comment at that time. But we also want to leave time we have received, as Mr. Riley alluded to, we've received many documents and responses to questions from counselors from National Grid. And at this point, I think it would be helpful for the council to have a chance to send those along, not only for counselors to review, which counselors have started doing, but to city departments who would have the best insight on those so they can also give us their opinion as to whether the reports make sense, seem appropriate. That will take some time. Additionally, Mr. Miari's schedule does not allow him to be here at our May 2nd meeting. So I think for due diligence, to make sure that we have time, that will be the plan. So members of the public, there will be another opportunity to have public comment at that time as well. I just think it's important to put that out there. So with that, I will restate in case people have just joined us that there is an in-person sign-up sheet by Councillor Crowley. If you are here in person, you would like to sign up to speak, you can come forward at any point and put your name there. And if you are online with us, you can type your name and address in the chat for the record, but also so that Ms. Dixon and I can monitor the chat and begin to work our way through the list. In the interest of making sure that we hear from as many members of the public as possible, I will allow 3 minutes of comment for each public speaker. If you don't take that long, that's okay. And some of you who have been with us for these before, you are familiar with this routine, but Councillor Rotundo will be our timekeeper, and his groovy tunes will cut you off at 3 minutes, and it will on his phone. But that will just be an indication to begin to wrap up your comment, and that really is just in the interest of fairness so we can hear from as many members of the public as possible. With that, we will begin actually with Jennifer Hall, who had typed in the chat, and Jennifer's been waiting quite a while. So Ms. Hall, if you are still with us, if you unmute during this portion, and you have up to 3 minutes to address us. Oh, and if you would, I apologize for interrupting, but state your name. This is not just for Ms. Hall, but state your name and address for the record when you begin your public comment, please. Ms. Hall, are you able to click the microphone button at the bottom of your screen to unmute? Ms. Dixon is looking there. Yep. Bear with us. Ms. Dixon's checking the host settings here. It is checked that she should be able to turn on her own microphone.
Yeah, and someone had unmuted before because when you sent
Ms. Dixon is wondering if you have a phone available, would it be possible for you to call in for audio? Do you have the dial-in number, or Ms. Dixon can type it in the chat? Ms. Dixon, would you be willing to type that in the chat? And maybe if we could, while Ms.
From home, I'm unable to hear anything right now.
So Kim, they're saying there's no audio on BevCam. Can people who are on the Google Meet itself, are you able to hear us right now?
Yes. We have a yes. No, they can
5 by 5.
So this is for people who are watching on BevCam itself?
I'm not over there. I can't help that.
No, they can hear. I think it was
I can call my wife and wake her up.
So here's what I'd like to do, actually, because I want to make sure that people can hear. Councilors, I would like to entertain a motion to take just a 3-minute recess so we can try to get this squared away, make sure everyone has audio. Is there a motion for a 3-minute recess, please?
Second.
We do, but I want to square away this issue about. So is there a motion for a 3-minute recess?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay, how do I hit audio?
Thank you. Let's take a 3-minute recess and square this away, please. And Ms. Hall will be right back with you.
Yes, hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. We're going to take just a quick 3-minute recess to make sure
This is Jennifer Hall.
Yep, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Okay.
I can, I'm just on a separate computer. I can hear you on this computer. No, I need this.
Oh, can you type it in the chat? Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. Same, yes. Yes, yeah, for like 3 minutes, just to square it away.
Him. We hear from people at home that they are able to hear. And Ms. Hall, if we could pick up with you, we'll begin with you for public comment. And Councilor Rotundo will keep time for 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Hall, and I live at 19 Abbott Street. Thank you and good evening. I'd like to read a portion of a letter that my wife, Blythe Hazen, and I submitted to the council members, Mayor Cahill, and Commissioner Collins on April 15. We are residents and owners of 19 Abbott Street in Ward 2, Beverly. Our home is along the proposed route of the Salem-Beverly transmission line. We are solidly in favor of upgrading in our community. We all appreciate and concern the immediacy of this project based on the aging, failing line at the existing route. However, we are not in favor of this new project as it is proposed running through any residential neighborhood in our community. We want to be very clear that this is not an NIMBY issue. Ward 2 and our immediate neighborhood is truly mixed use, single families, multifamilies, commercial properties, construction, and more. We love this about Ward 2. Our house is right in front of a fire station, disco flashing lights and sirens at all hours. Within a few block radius, we also have low income housing, senior housing, college housing, daycare, restaurants, and their parking needs, and a recovery program. It is a wild and wonderful to live in this section of Beverly. Our objection to this project is not the short-term disruption, but rather a sincere fear for the health and well-being of our family, neighborhood, and the historical old buildings that make up this unique part of our city. The EMF experts can't seem to say for certain what is safe distance is. As comparison guidelines in Canada recommends, sitting in the lines like this 25 meters from residencies. Magnetic fields will impact our bodies. How exactly, we don't know. We move in and out of magnetic fields every day, and in and out is what is important according to EMF experts. Kids go to school, folks go to work, but the work at home and the stay at home and the homebound won't move in and out. They will be in it for extended periods of time with no chance of a reset. These are the folks we worry about. We are a family with migraines, epilepsy, and medical implants. We have a homebound family member. We are afraid of this project and what it will mean to our health in very real ways, none of which have been addressed by NGRID or the city's EMF expert. NGRID is not saying they will cycle the power on and off between the two lines, or whether they will just use this line as a backup. It sounds like we could very well be in close proximity of the EMF fields all the time, or extended periods of time. The line also appears to have the capacity to have a load increase in the future. This is terrifying. If the project moves forward with the current design, we are concerned that we might not be able to stay in our home that we so deeply love and have invested and remodeled so that we can live and age here and as we lose our mobility. This project may very well take all of this from us. In addition, our immediate neighborhood and along the proposed project route is full of many old historic homes. They are a great deal of concern for those owners that these buildings will not fare well with this kind of intense construction right up against free floating stone foundations and aging wooden structures. NGRID has provided no answers to how they will rectify any structural damage to these buildings. Had we actually seen this information about the replacement relocation line early on, we would have responded. NGRID's original communication was sketchy and ingenuous. Despite their ambitious recent efforts at community outreach, we feel like we were and are still being deceived. We look forward to the discussion on Tuesday. Thank you for your public service, Blythe Hazen and Jennifer Hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to both of you for working together to get your audio going there. And much appreciated. And thank you for joining us. Working through the list that I have, and again, you can continue to sign up as we go, but David Mahood, please, if you are here, you would come up to the podium here. And name and address for the record before you begin, if you would.
David Mahood, 191 Lothrop Street. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. First, I want to say thank you to the Beverly City Council. Many of you responded to my and others' recent inquiries, and we appreciate your time and consideration. Also to Commissioner Collins, that was great, your time that you gave us as well. We appreciate it. I wanted to inquire again as to why the King Street alternate route isn't under consideration. From what I can tell, it is less costly to consumers and it runs through a less urban pathway. This option was not discussed earlier, but as an abutter to the proposed route, I'm asking again. The clandestine actions of the Siting Board and National Grid have left me kind of incredulous as to how this process has taken place. And again, for my environmental concerns, an analysis by the Rocky Mount Institute, a nonpartisan energy research organization, estimated that utilities in the northeastern United States could lose up to $15 billion by 2030 as customers switch to solar power. It's no coincidence that solar power accounts for only 11% of our energy here en masse, and that is a fact. And the sun is a renewable natural resource. Moreover, the irony isn't lost on me that Friday is Earth Day. And here we are, 52 years after the first one, still polluting our ecosystem, still addicted to fossil fuels, still subsidizing dirty energy projects, still warming our planet. At a time when the stakes couldn't be higher. The recent IPCC report states To avoid mounting loss of life, biodiversity, infrastructure, ambitious, accelerated action is required to adapt to climate change, at the same time as making rapid, deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. How this project makes immediate and deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions eludes me. By this 52nd anniversary of Earth Day, I would have hoped by now that National Grid's legacy would be their full divestment from fossil fuels and their leadership in the complete transition to renewable energy versus being a contributor to climate chaos. By their own words, all of National Grid's electric system operators' net zero scenarios rely on an effectively fully decarbonized power sector by 2035 to reach net zero by 2050. This project is nowhere clearly aligned with that scenario. And as we've learned over and over, to our detriment, it's profits over planet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahood. And as I promised, I got your name right this time, I think. Thank you for being here with us. Next on our list, we have Andrea Shine. And I do apologize for anyone's name that I do mispronounce.
My name is Andrea Shine. I live at 147 Lothrop Street. The main concern that I have is the environmental impacts of this transmission line. My husband and I moved to Beverly 7 years ago from the South Shore. We were very excited to be able to live across from the Central Cemetery. The park-like atmosphere of it makes it a wonderful place to walk and exercise or even teach a child to ride a bike without worrying about traffic. And Lothrop is quite a busy street, so it's nice to have that option. A few years ago, there was, I'm sorry, the cemetery is home to many birds and hawks, and a few years ago, there was a family of foxes that the neighborhood was excited about. We were so happy to be surrounded by people who love nature like we do. There is a very large tree that sits on the border of the cemetery and Lothrop Street, and the roots come out onto Lothrop Street. I'm concerned how the digging would affect that tree's roots. It's a lovely old tree that should be allowed to remain where it is and where it has been for many, many years. We appreciate how environmentally active our neighbors are. Our neighborhood is. We take part in the compost service offered by Beverly. Our neighbors raise bees and put up signs asking people not to spray chemicals. The idea that we'd be living so close to the transmission line is worrisome and scary. There are no traditional front yards on Lothrop Street, so we would be living and working. My husband and I both work from home. We would be less than 15 feet from the transmission line all day. I urge the City Council to not allow this planned route proposed by National Grid and to find some other route. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shine. Next on the list, we have Idan Davidian. Thank you. And again, just name and address for the record before you begin, if you would.
Hello, I'm Dr. Idan Davidian, 152 Hale Street. I'm a dentist who works at 9 Broadway downtown. My patients depend on me to be there. They have to come to my office physically. I don't have the luxury of working from home. So to get there, if there's any disruption for a patient to get to my office, it's just creating a barrier to access to care. And these access to care barriers prevent patients from getting care that they need. Sometimes it can be life-threatening. I'm not the only dentist on my street. There's probably about 10 other dentists just on Broadway. All these people and dentists, they work to help the community. If there's any disruption, which even the construction right now, we can't get many wheelchair-bound patients in. Broadway is blocked off. If there are people who are in wheelchairs, which we do see a lot of them, they cannot get into our office. It's just a issue that we deal with. Our office is handicap accessible, so if they can't come, we can't see them. Secondly, if there are other plans and alternate plans that are cheaper, it just makes sense to go with a cheaper plan. I heard that there was the King Street plan. It's $50 million cheaper. I don't see why we won't consider something else. If there needs to be more details and more studies done for this project, I think that those should be done before committing to a plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davidian. Dr. Davidian, I apologize. Thank you for being here with us and for your comments. Next on our list for public speakers, we have Mr. Tim Averill, please. So, Mr. Averill, I know you know this drill, but name and address for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Lights green. I'm Tim Averill from 165 Lothrop Street. I want to say just a couple of things tonight. First, compliment Mr. Parsons for the excellent review that was given, and I want to highlight some of the things that Mr. Parsons said. Talked about this kind of construction being very dangerous, talking about bedrock as being a very, very important issue, being concerned about environmental crowding and trying to deal with all of those things, and the need to have a very, very thorough study. In fact, were we to go ahead with the MBTA line, it would have required a great deal more study. The suggestion of the group that I represent, called Pause the Project, has essentially been that we need to stop whatever decision we make, and with complete transparency and with meetings of everyone involved, redo what has been a terribly flawed process and make sure that we know what's going on, because all of the things that Mr. Parsons mentioned are things that we would need to examine about any route, and that's been done really under the cover of the COVID situation without public meetings in a flawed process. So that's what we're asking for. I don't know enough about the King Street location, but I do know there's bedrock throughout Lothrop Street. And I do know that it was correct when we talked about houses with stone foundations and wood frame construction. And the city so far has not got any indication of what National Grid is going to do with all of the damages that are created. Now let's turn to the other issue, which has been brought up again tonight by National Grid. I just want to read you something from 1950, put out by the Tobacco Industry Research Committee. They have made three important points. There's no conclusive scientific proof of a link between smoking and cancer. Second, medical research points to many possible causes of cancer. And third, the millions of people who derive pleasure and satisfaction from smoking can be reassured that scientific means will be used to get the facts as soon as possible. My suggestion is that we don't look at just a paid consultant for National Grid, but instead let's look at this question, let's look at the comments that have already been made about international standards, and let's ask our counselors as a judicial branch here to decide that we do not yet have the information we need, nor do we have a sense of what the remediation measures will be, and relook at that memorandum of agreement, get something that we all agree with. We support electric energy as it's needed. We will do our best to support the process, but we have had a flawed process and we have not been treated well in this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Averill, for your time and for your comments. The next speaker on our list is Tiffany Collins, please. If you would just start with your name and address for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Yep. Tiffany Collins, 35 Broadway. And I'm also the president of the Ward 2 Civic Association. I'm a little ill-prepared because I wasn't completely sure I was going to talk tonight, but here I am. So, a couple things. There was someone here earlier from the that lives along the railroad, but she got a little tired and she went home and she's watching now. So there are people that live along the railroad that are involved, that are concerned about this. I think, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it, that they're a little bit, the people that live on the railroad and the folks in Ward 2 are a little bit tired of constant construction and development, which is a whole other discussion, but constant building and digging and shifting and moving, and that happens in Ward 2. So I think people are just a little bit tired of it, and that's why they're kind of not showing up. But that's why I'm here. So that's my conversation about railroad. And the newspaper article was actually, I'm glad you brought it up because that's why I wanted to talk tonight. About the project over in Salem. I live on, everybody knows I live on Broadway, I've said that, and 5 years ago, we lived through Broadway reconstruction. So I live on a brand new street that's gonna get torn up, brand new. And it was physically painful living through this process. It was, I had a 4-year-old, he's 7 now and hopefully he's in bed. But it's school vacation week. It was physically painful. I would have construction guys helping me carry him into the house, helping me carry groceries into the house. I had plates. There were some nights they would leave and not leave plates, and there was a gap like this to get out my driveway. And that happened all up and down our street. At one point during Neil's 4th birthday, there was a porta potty at the top of my driveway. It's gross. It's gross. I'm saying it. It's gross. This process was just painful, and so I wanted to talk tonight when we talked about the construction process. It's just, and I think that people don't realize how painful this process is and how big this is. And I know that, we talked about this being the big dig of Beverly. This is the big dig of Beverly. This is a big deal, and this is going to tear stuff up for years. And I think people don't realize how much things are going to get torn up. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins, and kudos to the exact timing that you had right there, too. Very coordinated with the music. The next speaker is Mr. Michael Parada, please. Mr. Parada, if you would come on up.
I'm Michael Parada. I live at 2 Weber Avenue.
Oh, will you come up?
Until the microphone.
Just for the fans on BevCam.
I'm Michael Parada. I live at 2 Weber Avenue here in Beverly on Goat Hill. I heard a comment about a lot tonight. One is National Grid is a British-owned company. To the shareholders of National Grid, they're going to want this project done as cheaply as possible. And that's how I feel. The next thing is I heard that we're going to have no inconvenience to any part of this project. I want to tell you how many times I've been late to work, late to a doctor's appointment, because the equipment was sitting at the end of my driveway, which is a pain. Or my fiance not being able to get in the driveway because the street's blocked. The next thing is the houses on Weber Avenue or on Goat Hill, we're all, for years, been fighting a water problem. Whenever that ledge is disturbed, we now develop a leak. Radon, I don't want to tell you how much it's cost me to have my foundation fixed twice from the street being repaired and another radon test. Now we're going to put a cable through a neighborhood with a lot of granite. Bad idea, because the railroad tracks would have been a lot easier and more direct. And we're going to disturb the ledge. What is National Grid's responsibility going to be to the homeowner when these foundations sitting on the ledge start leaking and radon gas problems? And that's all I've got to say at this point. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parada.
You're welcome, Julie.
And then the final speaker we have signed up already is Andrea Friedman, please. You don't have to apologize. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I was going to say, and I know you've gotten really good at this, but name and address for the record, and then the floor is yours.
I'm Andrea Friedman. I live at 32 Butman Street. There should be no problem hearing me. I didn't want to speak again. I really didn't. But I heard a couple of things tonight, and a lot of things I was going to say, Tim had already said, so no one could say it better than Tim. Tim is incredible. But I heard some very upsetting things. I mean, one thing I definitely heard was that it's going to be very challenging if we decide to go down the red way. It's going to be extremely challenging. But it's going to be challenging no matter where we put it. Let's face it. I didn't hear that going through the neighborhoods was the best route. I did not hear that tonight. From our expert, I didn't hear it from anybody, really. What I did hear, however, which was very upsetting to me, was that you were subtly threatened tonight. That if you didn't do it the way National Grid wants you to do it, and I'm talking to all the city councilors here, including you, Julia. I'm talking to you, because this is all up to you. But I heard a very, not really that thinly veiled threat, that if you didn't do it their way, that they were going to, it wasn't going to look pretty for you. But remember, we're your constituents. I also heard today that the sort of subset of citizens just didn't know what we were talking about. And I find that kind of offensive, actually, because I think we know what we're talking about pretty clearly. And I can't even speak for myself, I can speak for some of the people here tonight that have researched this, have looked into it, looked into every possibility, and we all agree that this has been a flawed process, and we all agree that this is not the best place to put this. We want this line. We want reliable energy, but this is not the best way to do it. Okay, so I'm asking you, the city council, because it's in your hands, you know? Oh, I want to make one other point. This is not an MB issue, because I don't live on the line. I don't live on the proposed line. There's a lot of people here who it's not going to affect, you know, directly right in front of their house, but we still don't think this is the best place. And I put it up to you. You have the power. Do not be intimidated by what you've heard here tonight. You have the power to pause this process so we can get, which is what I heard tonight, the data that we need to make an informed decision, that is right for everybody. Do not be intimidated. We have your back. The citizens of Beverly have your back, and you can do what's right for the citizens of Beverly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Friedman. And thank you, as always, for your time. Ms. Rayne, and then I think that will be our last public comment for tonight. But Ms. Rayne, if you'd like to come up.
Yes, I actually signed a sheet when the table was here.
Oh, okay. I would say someone accidentally carried away the first sheet. Is anybody besides Ms. Rayne in the same situation? Okay, excellent. I apologize, Ms. Rayne. That sheet did mysteriously disappear.
Thank you.
So please, if you would name an address for the record.
Carol Rayne, 27 Pratt Avenue. I actually have mixed feelings about speaking tonight. Not because I have mixed feelings about what I'm asking for, but because I have such deep respect for the council and for the members. And I know this puts you guys in a spot. This isn't an easy thing, but I feel really strongly about it. The process has left me, let me back up. I'm going to say something that's not a fact, but it's the truth. The process has left me with distrust of National Grid and its motives. I get it that I use electricity and I want electricity to be available. But I don't trust National Grid to consider our health and our convenience as much as they consider their own convenience in their profits. We now rely on the City Council to delay the project until we're assured that the process receives improvements that we know it needs. And also, a long-term health study. So, pause the project now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rayne, and thank you for putting your hand up also. I really appreciate that and apologize for that inconvenience. I would like to ask Councilor Rotundo, will you switch seats with me for one moment, and then I'll have Councilor Rotundo call for the vote to recess this hearing. But I have not spoken yet in this, and I'd like to say something brief. For people wondering why Councilor Rotundo and I have to switch, the president is not allowed to offer an opinion on a matter that's before the council for vote from the president's chair. So Vice President Rotundo will end up taking the motion to recess this, and then we'll resume. But as I said, I have not yet, because I've been sitting in that seat and convening the meetings, have not yet spoken, and I will be brief right now. But I do just want to make mention of something that's not sat right with me for most of this meeting, and I think it's been alluded to now by the past two speakers, public speakers. I speak only for myself. I don't know how my fellow councilors feel, but I think it's not only possible, but incredibly important that as a councilor, I make every decision weighing not only what facts are presented, but the facts of how it impacts people who live in this community, who are the people that we're supposed to be representing. And so I take umbrage at the insinuation that the council should not consider the opinions or the inconvenience of the public. And I further am personally bothered by the sort of dismissal of what has been presented, felt, researched, and shared by members of the public being somehow less important or less of worth for me to consider as a counselor than what I've heard from experts, frankly, on either side of this issue that the city has brought forward or that National Grid has brought forward. I've said all along in my role as a counselor, not just about this issue, that I think it is possible to imagine a government that starts from a place of doing what's right for people and doing that with care, an ethos of care, respect, equity, and truly compassion and love, and make good decisions. And I intend to bring that to this process as well. And so I just need to mention that for me, that's part of it, but I do take umbrage at the suggestion that the council not somehow weigh the voices of the people that we represent. And so I appreciate my fellow councilors giving me a moment to speak as a councilor, not as the president. Vice President Rotundo, I appreciate that. But I do intend to do my work as a counselor in that way, and just want to personally say to members of the public, your voices do matter, and your presence here matters, and your presence with us online matters. So thank you for giving us that time. And thank you. Thank you, Vice President Rotundo.
Motion to recess.
So moved. So moved.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make one quick clarification before we recess for tonight on the article that was shared, just for the sake of the public. There was a meeting a couple of weeks ago of the Ward 2 Civic Association that I was happy to attend, and the National Grid representatives there referenced the Salem project. And so I asked if there were, in the spirit of fact-finding, even though we weren't in public hearing mode, it wasn't an official meeting, I asked whether there were lessons learned from that project, whether there were reports that National Grid had submitted formally to the Salem City Council that spoke to, keeping on deadline, some of the things that we're considering, or just things that would reassure us and neighbors that a similar project generated some construction lessons that would be applied here in Beverly, and was told that the coverage in the Salem News was the best we could get. So,
all in favor to motion to 5/16 at 8 p.m.?
So moved.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 8-0 carries the motion.
Thank you very much, Vice President Rotundo, for switching seats with me and for doing that. Members of the public, thank you again for your time, your attention, your attendance. As you heard, we will pick this up on May 16th at 8 p.m. In City Council chambers as usual. And with that, so that members of the public can also have a chance to be able to leave and not feel like they're crushed in here, I would entertain a motion to take a 2-minute recess.
So
please.
moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0. We already did it.
Good. You're good.
All right. Members of the public who are still here, you do not need to leave, but city councilors, I need to call you back so we can finish up the remaining business. Picking up at communications from other city officers and boards, and Ms. Dixon will pick up at Order 113, please.
Order 113, a request from Councillor St. Hilaire for a Public Services Committee public forum regarding the usage of Pete's Park and to conduct a review of city parks rules and permitting processes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. We will refer this to Public Services, but Councillor St. Hilaire, do you want to say a word about this order at all?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just given the incident that took place a few weeks ago, I thought it made sense. I think there was a breakdown in process given the oversight responsibility of the Public Services Committee. I thought it makes sense to conduct a review to make sure that doesn't happen again in any of our other parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Hilaire. Councillor Feldman, you're the Chair of Public Services.
I'd also like to add that
Microphone.
I also received a similar, an additional inquiry regarding a different park and a permit, completely unrelated, which, so I think that to go to this point and just this one incident, I think it's definitely a process that needs some more public discussion and pair advice. So we are looking at getting that on the schedule for next week, so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feldman. Thank you, Councillor St. Hilaire, for submitting that order. So we'll be staying tuned for a Public Services meeting for some public conversation about this. Ms. Dixon, let's go to Order 114. Yes, I think so, but technically we'll refer it to Public Services.
Order number 114, President Flowers and Councilor Rotundo, School Committee, Finance and Facilities Third Quarter Report.
I would entertain a motion to receive that and place it on file.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0, and thanks to Councilor Rotundo and to Ms. Jean Sherburne for their work on that. Order 115.
Order 115, appointment for Ward 4 representative of the Open Space and Recreation Committee, Mr. James Passanisi, thank you, 18 Lowell Street.
Thank you. And Councillor Houseman, this is your appointment, and we can act on it tonight because it's a council appointment. Did you want to say anything about Mr. Passanisi?
Yes, Council President, thank you. I had an opportunity to spend some time talking with Mr. Passini, looking at his resume, his cover letter. He was quite, it was refreshing. He was quite dogged about reaching out to me and connecting with me, showing his interest in serving on this, which is great because I'd been asking a number of people who I wasn't getting anywhere with that. So, no, I think he'll be a great addition to the committee. He brings a real passion and a really strong background, I think, to doing this kind of work. So I certainly recommend to the council his appointment.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
would entertain a motion to approve the appointment from
So
Councilor
moved.
Houseman.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, I didn't think so. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to Order 116. This is an application for a secondhand motor vehicle Class 2 dealer's license for North Shore Imports LLC at 715 Hale Street. This is just a name change for Beverly Farms Motors.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve this Class 2 dealer's license.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. Order 117.
Order 117 is, these are the renewals for the petroleum storage registrations for 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. I would entertain a motion to approve Order 117.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. Order 118.
Order 118 is an application for a secondhand junk dealer's license. Oh, these are the renewals for 2022, so they're all ones that have been previously licensed.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. I would entertain a motion to approve the renewals of those licenses.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. We've already done Order 119. That was the approval of the lease from Dr. Chirocek for the Apple student laptops one-to-one initiative. So thank you for that. We'll move on to Order 120.
Order 120 is a request from Councillor Hausman, the invitation to the Mayor and Finance Director Ailes to attend the April 28th Finance and Property meeting.
Councillor Houseman, was there anything you wanted to say? You did reference this letter earlier.
Yeah, I just asked that this be referred to Finance and Property for the record. That way, well, we'll have an order to refer to when we meet with the mayor.
Thank you very much.
Oh, do I need to repeat myself? Okay, thank you.
He's green. Okay, thank you, Councillor Houseman. We'll refer that, Order 120, refer that to Finance and Property, please. Let's go to Communications, Applications, and Petitions.
Order 121, this is a National Grid petition to construct a line of underground electric conduits at Railroad Ave. Petition number 30441241A.
For this one, we need to set a public hearing, so I would entertain a motion to set a public hearing for May 2nd at 7:45 p.m.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0. So we'll set that public hearing on Order 121 for May 2nd, 7:45. Let's go to motions and orders. This is Order 91, and this will be for final passage this evening.
This is the recommendation for the change in loading zone time parameters at 110, 114 Rantoul Street. This would be for no time restrictions all day. And this was published in the newspaper Friday, March 25th, and this would be the final passage. I already had the first and second reading.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. Is there a motion to approve Order 91?
So moved.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0, and so that's final passage for that. Ms. Dixon, you have some reports from committees.
I do. So the first one I have is the Committee on Public Services, to whom is referred the matter of an appointment to the Beverly Waste Reduction Committee for Ms. Amy Henderson. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the appointment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0. Everybody sitting near me knows I don't have my piece of paper. I did.
Okay, the next
Did you see
one.
the panic in my eyes?
The next one is Order 99, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding the appointment of Mr. John Ouellette, 27 Pierce Avenue, to serve on the Design Review Board. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of this appointment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I know. Motion carries 8-0. And thank you to all these volunteers who are being appointed to these many boards and committees. It's such an important part of making sure that our city can continue to do good work.
All right, I got 3 more and then we're out.
All right.
Order 100, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding a reappointment of Ms. Lisa Wilworth, for 15 Fern Street, to serve on the Beverly Waste Reduction Committee. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the reappointment.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of this appointment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0.
Order 101, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding an appointment of Mr. David Lane, 10 Foster's Point, to serve on the Beverly Harbor Management Authority. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of this appointment. Oh,
One comment. I think this was one where we didn't have the opportunity to speak with the person, and all felt, if I'm remembering our meeting correctly, all felt pretty confident in his service, but I didn't know if anyone had had a chance to follow up further. I did not, but.
He was my recommendation. He's a director of the public service over in Danvers, so I think he'll be a good addition to the harbor management. I've spoken with him numerous times, and so I think it's a good appointment.
Thank you, Councillor Rotundo. Councillor Feldman, I saw your hand too.
I just was recollecting the meeting. I didn't have those meeting notes in front of me, so that was one that we were supposed to, but his resume did, now that you're jogging my memory, he had never responded to my knowledge, RSVPing coming to the meeting, so we weren't sure if he was coming or not. That was the main holdup, but.
Thank you, Councillor Feldman, and thank you, Councillor Rotundo, for that recommendation. Councillor Bowen, all set? So the question comes on the acceptance of proposal and the adoption of the appointment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0.
Order 102, the Committee on Public Services, to whom is referred the matter regarding an appointment of Mr. Rayne Bouchard, 11 Elizabeth Avenue, to serve on the Permanent Building Commission. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments on this one? Councillor Houseman.
Yeah, just a quick question. I recognize the name. Can someone help me remember Mr. Bouchard? Councillor Rotundo is.
Oh, Councillor Rotundo.
Ray Bouchard, Mr. Bouchard was on the committee for all the schools at one time. He's being reappointed, obviously, with the new construction of the, or looking into it.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Feldman.
In addition to that, we found that he was one of the only people that was on the original Permanent Building Commission when it was still in function, because this has been kind of a defunct commission. Yeah. So the people that we had appointed or had approved at the prior meeting, none of them had served previously, but this person, Mr. Bouchard, had previously served on the Permanent Building Commission when it was inactive the last time. And that's what his cover letter expressed, that that he wanted to be, because of that, a member of that originally.
Thank you, Councillor Feldman. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, question comes on the acceptance of proposal and the adoption of the appointment. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0. That brings us to the end of your list, Ms. Dixon. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you again to members of the public, those who joined us in person, those who joined us remotely. A very big thank you to Kim and the team at BevCam for helping us to make sure that we had this hybrid meeting option. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you to Ms. Dixon also for helping to make sure that the hybrid portion of the meeting was running smoothly, and for serving in the clerk role at the same time. So thank you very much. And thank you to city councilors who continue to, we've been digging into some really big issues since January, and we just, I think, continue to really do good work, and I appreciate all of you giving so much of your time to it as well. Are there any announcements before we wrap up? Any subcommittees that have anything on the schedule you need to? Councillor Feldman.
We have lots of things on the schedule for public services, and I'm going to try and get this right. Okay. We have, for public services coming up, we have on Monday, April 25th at 6 p.m., we have a public services committee meeting that's a public hearing on pest control and rodents. What do you mean? Okay, but, oh, no. I got it in my calendar before we talked, yeah.
Public conversation.
Yes, public conversation on pests and rodent control. On Tuesday, April 26th, at either 6 or 7, we have to confirm with Lisa, we have a public services committee meeting that's also a public hearing of sort. No. Okay.
Conversation.
Public conversation here at the middle school to provide a hybrid option. And then on May.
Subject matter being?
The parks and permitting. The permitting process that Councillor St. Hilaire's letter had requested. So public discussion regarding that. I might have known it was coming down the pike. Wednesday, May 11th, there will be an additional public services public discussion on the flooding in wards 1 and 3 at 7 p.m. in City Hall. I think I did it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feldman. Public services has a lot on the agenda.
Yes.
Counselor Houseman.
Yes, on the 25th, Finance and Property will be joining Public Services on the hearing regarding, or the public conversation regarding rodent control. And just as a reminder, as I alluded to and we had on our agenda this evening, the 28th of April we'll be meeting Committee of the Whole and Subcommittee with the Mayor and Mr. Ailes, Mr. Ailes regarding the budget. And I seem to have some allergy thing going on. Excuse me. Of the meeting on the 28th, I believe it's at 7 o'clock. 6:30? Yeah, I believe it's at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Counselor Houseman.
Is that a quick question?
Well,
Okay.
we've got 2 minutes.
Question-
The charter conversation, when is that scheduled to, what's the next step, I guess, on the charter?
Since we kept the public hearing open, that will continue now on the 2nd, in the context of our meeting on the 2nd. And so, Counselor Rand, your subcommittee will not begin discussion on that until after that hearing. Is that correct? Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for that clarifying question. With that, I think that brings us just to right about the time that I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Good work, everyone.